Chapter 36-33 Chapter 36-33 The Fiend 1. Chapter 36-33 The Fiend 1. Feng Wu came to her senses. If those spiritual overlords went to the Peace Grassland, I don't think Jun Linyuan will go after them. Then I think he went to his father, Feng Sun said grumpily. Feng Wu looked at him. Why do you look so angry? Feng Sun snorted. I'm mad because I remembered something. You were talking about that plan with His Majesty in the Imperial Study when I sent you to the palace. He was willing to put you at such a risk because you're not his own daughter. He wouldn't have agreed to it. You're only a spiritual king, and you were fighting over 40 spiritual overlords. How could he let you do such a thing? I'm getting goosebumps just thinking about it. I was so scared that I'm having nightmares. When I asked you earlier, you kept telling me that you had a plan. Is that why you're bedridden now? The more Feng Sun spoke, the angrier he became. He felt so sorry for the girl. Feng Wu smiled bitterly. It's not like that. Feng Sun said angrily. It's just not right. His Majesty has everything, but your Iy-1ing near Anna can't move. Does your Ramui nor near Esaleakalf where's your mother? Feng Wu said, Don't tell Xiaoqi. I don't want him to come here. Feng Sun snorted. Feng Wu said quietly, There has to be a way. There has to be. In the palace. Feng Wu and Feng Sun were right. Jun Linyuan had gone to Emperor Wu. The Emperor's study. Emperor Wu frowned. By then, Jun Linyuan had smashed his study. All the maids and eunuchs were kneeling on the ground, and the Empress, the second prince, and the third princess didn't dare to come in. The imperial study. Who else would dare to destroy that study? That would be seen as a revolt. And Jun Linyuan had put his sword on Emperor Wu's neck. Emperor Wu looked at Jun Linyuan in resignation. The girl came up with the plan herself. Jun Linyuan's eyes glinted coldly. Emperor Wu smiled bitterly. I didn't know it would be so dangerous. The girl said she could handle it, and I've sent someone to protect her. I've even sent Situ Mingjing to protect her. Jun Linyuan's aura filled the entire imperial palace. The teenager was simply too terrifying. It was as if he could destroy heaven and earth with a wave of his hand. Even Emperor Wu was intimidated. The Empress Dowager was still sick. Hearing that something had happened to Emperor Wu, she rushed to the study without putting on her outer robe. Junjun, what are you doing? Only the Empress Dowager dared to enter the study. The door was smashed open, revealing what was going on inside. Empress Dugu looked up involuntarily and was astonished. And she wasn't the only one. Jun Linshan and Jun Wuxia saw it as well. Jun Linyuan's Sky Destroyer was right at Emperor Wu's throat. He was their emperor. After the initial shock, Empress Dugu was filled with despair. How was she supposed to fight for the throne for Jun Linshan? Even His Majesty couldn't do anything to Jun Linyuan. Jun Linshan paled as well and was on the verge of collapsing. Jun Wuxia tugged at Jun Linshan's sleeve. Brother Linshan, please don't offend the Crown Prince again. I'm scared. Who wouldn't be afraid of a murderous fiend? Chapter 36-34 Chapter 36-34 The Fiend 2. Chapter 36-34 The Fiend 2. The energy Jun Linyuan gave off was terrifying. No one dared to offend him. Jun Wuxia said in a trembling voice, I heard that the old lady of the Hua family was a spiritual saint, but Brother Linyuan cut her throat open and decapitated her. Jun Linshan glared at Jun Wuxia. Stop it! Stop it! Jun Wuxia shuddered. I heard that Hua Wushuang was scared out of her wits. She's like a crazy person now. Brother, if you still want to compete with the Crown Prince for the throne, I won't help you. Please let me live. Jun Linshan said, Shut up! Stop talking! Empress Dugu didn't know what to say. It was obvious that everyone saw Jun Linyuan as a fiend now. The Empress Dowager rushed into the study, grabbed Jun Linyuan and said sternly, "Your Royal Highness, do you have any idea what you're doing? Put down your sword. That's your father." Jun Linyuan ignored her. The Empress Dowager was furious. "Jun Linyuan, I order you to put down your sword." The Crown Prince had pointed his sword at the Emperor, and that wasn't usurping the throne. He should be executed. However, the teenager's eyes were cold, and there was a grim look on his face. "You can't do that to someone I care so much about. She's not alone. I'll get it back for her. Jun Patian, this is the last time." Putting away his sword, Jun Linyuan turned to leave. Emperor Wu remained silent as he watched Jun Linyuan leave. "Emperor, are you all right? Are you hurt?" The Empress Dowager was really angry at Jun Linyuan this time. He didn't even talk to her when he left. What's going on with the Crown Prince? Is he infatuated by Feng Wu? Why is he pointing a sword at his father? How can he do that? I think it's all because of Feng Wu. She's such a jinx. If it hadn't been for her, Yuero wouldn't have died. I hate her so much. The Empress Dowager expressed her anger without hesitation. Mrs. Hua was the Empress Dowager's childhood friend, and the Empress Dowager was the one who had spread the rumor that Hua Wushuang was going to be the Crown Prince's wife. As a result, the Hua family was almost wiped out. "Mother!" Emperor Wu stared at the Empress Dowager. "Watch your language!" The Empress Dowager said, "This is the Imperial Palace, and I'm the Empress Dowager. What should I say?" Emperor Wu gestured at Gao to show the others out. After the others left, Emperor Wu looked at the Empress Dowager and took a deep breath. "Mother, haven't you realized it by now? Did the Crown Prince really aim his sword at me?" The Empress Dowager asked, "What are you talking about?" Emperor Wu closed his eyes in pain. When he opened them again, his eyes were very cold. "Mother, didn't you order the Hua family to kill Feng Wu?" Emperor Wu finally asked the question. The Empress Dowager stared at Emperor Wu. "What are you talking about? I would never do such a thing." Emperor Wu looked at the Empress Dowager. "Are you sure? You didn't even give her a hint?" The Empress Dowager blanched, but she still shook her head. "No, I didn't." Emperor Wu turned away from the Empress Dowager and said seriously, "Mrs. Hua is dead, and no one can testify what you did. It doesn't matter if you've given her a hint. It's just that from now on." Chapter 36-35 Chapter 36-35 Master Linghu 1 Chapter 36-35 Master Linghu 1 Emperor Wu stared at the Empress Dowager. "But from now on." The Empress Dowager denied it outright. "No, I didn't hint at that. I didn't." Emperor Wu rubbed his forehead. "All right. If His Royal Highness asks you in the future, just use the same attitude." That rendered the Empress Dowager speechless. "Mother, please leave," Emperor Wu said weakly. The Empress Dowager wanted to say something, but she was terrified when she saw the cold look in Emperor Wu's eyes. She seemed to have lost something very important. When Emperor Wu was genuinely angry, the Empress Dowager didn't dare to defy him. She took a few steps toward the door when she heard Emperor Wu's low voice. Feng Wu, a mere spiritual king, fought off over 40 spiritual overlords. In the end, she sent the surviving 20 to the battlefield. With these 20-odd spiritual overlords, the Junwu Empire is gaining ground against our enemy. Mother, Feng Wu is 1,000 times better than you think. The Empress Dowager wanted to say something but hesitated. She had never hinted to Hua Yuero to kill Feng Wu, let alone destroy the Feng clan. Why should she do that? At her age, she didn't like taking lives anymore. She wanted a good reputation. However, was it possible? Had someone really given Hua Yuero a hint in her name? The Empress Dowager decided not to take the blame. She had to look into it. You think about it. Emperor Wu was obviously disappointed with the Empress Dowager. He sat down on the broken stairs and waved at her weakly. The Empress Dowager felt sorry for him. Jun Linyuan left the imperial palace without hesitation. Instead of going back to his residence, he turned around and headed for Wandering Temple. Since Jun Linyuan could tear apart the imperial study, he could do the same to Wandering Temple. The abbot was almost in tears when Jun Linyuan demolished the courtyard behind Wandering Temple, where Master Linghu used to live. He came out in a hurry. "Your Royal Highness, please don't do this. Please don't." Jun Linyuan smirked. Didn't that old monk say that he couldn't leave Wandering Temple? Where did he flee to? Master Linghu was the most capable cultivator of the Junwu Empire and the savior of the empire. No one else but Jun Linyuan dared to talk about him in that way. The abbot smiled bitterly. It's true. Master Linghu isn't in Wandering Temple anymore. No one can tell where he is now. Your Royal Highness, it has something to do with the fate of the Junwu Empire. Please don't ask. Jun Linyuan smirked. He's just a monk. If he doesn't abandon his worldly desires, he'll never reach perfection in his cultivation. The abbot felt his blood curdle. Jun Linyuan said, "If that's the case, what good will Wandering Temple do? Why don't we tear it down?" He was a teenager with the power to destroy heaven and earth. With a wave of his hand, he could move mountains and overturn seas. The abbot really couldn't stop him. "Your Royal Highness!" Seeing that Jun Linyuan was going to destroy the temple, the abbot said in a hurry, "Your Royal Highness, Master Linghu left a pouch behind before he left." The teenager glared at the abbot. The look gave the abbot the creep. He immediately took out a pouch from his chest pocket and handed it to Jun Linyuan. Jun Linyuan stared at him. "Why didn't you take it out earlier?" The abbot smiled bitterly. "Master Linghu said that we could only take it out if you really want to destroy the Wandering Temple. Otherwise." Chapter 36-36, Chapter 36-36, Master Linghu 2. Chapter 36-36, Master Linghu 2. Jun Linyuan frowned. "Otherwise what?" The abbot smiled bitterly. "Otherwise, I can't take it out because it would mean that you're not sincere enough." Jun Linyuan wanted to slap someone. The abbot stumbled back. "Your Royal Highness, please open it. Is it what you need?" Jun Linyuan couldn't be bothered to deal with the abbot anymore. He opened the pouch right away. It was quite a long note. The first line read, "Traveling the mortal world will help her to stabilize her cultivation level and reduce the difficulty of the lightning tribulation in the future." Something clicked in Jun Linyuan's head when he saw the word. It was referring to Feng Wu. Feng Wu had made too many breakthroughs in one go, which had made the lightning tribulation so difficult. Jun Linyuan had been worried that Feng Wu would be marked, and the lightning tribulation would all be so difficult in the future. That was so frustrating. But why could traveling in the mortal world reduce the lightning tribulation? Even someone as smart as Jun Linyuan couldn't figure it out for the time being. He went on reading. The second line read, "I know Huyin Yanba, a semi-divine medicine refiner, has a divine-level pill. He'll show up at the Northern Yen Palace in 3 months." The look on Jun Linyuan's face was indecipherable. He needed to be in the Northern Yen Palace in 3 months' time. Feng Wu needed to travel the world, so he was taking her with him this time. Jun Linyuan was lost in his thoughts. Should he take Master Linghu's words literally? When Jun Linyuan looked up, he saw that the abbot of Wandering Temple had run away as fast as a rabbit, fearing that Jun Linyuan would beat him up. Back at the residence, Jun Linyuan was still hesitating. As sharp as Feng Wu was, she asked Jun Linyuan when she saw that he was lost in his thoughts. Jun Linyuan had wanted to keep it a secret, but Feng Wu made him hand over the pouch with a few words. "Traveling the world?" Feng Wu looked at Jun Linyuan in bewilderment. "What does that have anything to do with my lightning tribulation?" For the first time in his life, the Crown Prince shook his head in front of the girl he loved. Feng Wu rubbed her forehead. And the second line. Go to the Northern Yan's royal palace in 3 months to see Huyen Yanba. Have you heard of that name before? Jun Linyuan nodded. I have. Feng Wu was surprised. Who is it? Do you remember the last time in the Peace Grassland when someone stopped me from fighting Shuejibe? Jun Linyuan asked slowly. Feng Wu nodded. Of course I do. He was her third senior brother. Jun Linyuan said, that was Chu Tianxiao, the Prime Minister of the Dongsang Kingdom. He's even more prestigious than the master teacher. He's Mu Zhou's third pupil. Feng Wu nodded. She knew that. From Bu Jingyu's portrait, she also knew that her third senior brother had been looking for her. Jun Linyuan said, Huyen Yanba is Master Mu's sixth pupil. Feng Wu asked, what? Was that her sixth senior brother? Jun Linyuan nodded solemnly. And this Huyen Yanba was the previous emperor of Northern Yin. He was only an emperor for a day before he gave the throne to his nephew, who is the current emperor of Northern Yin. Jun Linyuan frowned. But I've never heard of this Huyen Yanba being a semi-divine medicine refiner. Why does he have such a pill? Did Master Mu leave it with him? But how does Master Ling Hu know that? And what's his relationship with Huyen Yanba? Jun Linyuan frowned and felt that something was off. Feng Wu thought, does it have something to do with both my sixth senior brother and my beautiful master? Chapter 36-37 Chapter 36-37 Master Linghu 3 Chapter 36-37 Master Linghu 3 Feng Wu had her doubts about the pouch as well, but Little Phoenix was thrilled when she asked it. Oh my! Is it little Yanba? I remember him. When my master brought him back, he was barely 3 years old. He was so dumb and such a slow learner. The others picked on him a lot, but his hard work can make up for his lack of talent. His cultivation was so arduous that he became as capable as your third senior brother. Personality? Well, he's kind and honest. To Little Phoenix, Huyen Yanba was a humble man, but he was one of the most powerful men in the world and the pillar of Northern Yin. Because of him, Northern Yin was able to stay as stable as a rock. There were a lot of mineral veins in Northern Yin, but no one dared to take advantage of them. It was all because Northern Yin had such a powerful cultivator. Feng Wu then thought about her beautiful master. With the help of her senior brothers, would it be so much easier for her to find the third and fourth broken star pieces? After all, her senior brothers were all top cultivators. At that thought alone, Feng Wu tugged at Jun Linyuan's wide sleeve. Let's go. Shall we? Of course, he wouldn't turn her down. Sure. Jun Linyuan was the most efficient person Feng Wu had ever met. They had only just decided to leave at noon and everything was ready for their trip that afternoon. Naturally, Feng would go with them. Granny Gong stayed behind to guard the manor. Feng Wu and Feng Xiaoqi met for a while, but before long, Feng Xiaoqi was dragged away by Jun Linyuan. Feng Wu didn't see her mother because she was still cultivating in seclusion. Feng Wu felt uneasy, but she couldn't sense anything, so she had to put it aside for the time being. The most important thing for her now was to cure her broken body and recover her cultivation ability. Otherwise, everything would be for nothing. Hearing the news, Feng Sun arrived as fast as he could. Are you leaving? Take me with you. Feng Sun wouldn't let go of Feng Wu's sleeve. Take me with you. I've never been away from Boss Jun for more than a month. Feng Wu rolled her eyes. Go ask him yourself then. Feng Sun shook his head. No, I won't. He won't listen to anyone but you. 1 word from you is more useful than 10,000 words from me. Dear sister, am I not a good brother to you? Aren't you going to take me with you? Feng Wu rubbed her forehead. We're going to be in danger. Feng Sun stared at Feng Wu in disbelief. Going out with Boss Jun is dangerous? Kiddo, do you have so little faith in your future husband? What future husband? Feng Sun, don't call him that. Feng Wu threw a dirty look at him. Feng Sun was astonished. Boss Jun still hasn't succeeded yet. Feng Wu said, don't talk about it again or I won't take you with me. Feng Sun said, all right. Take me with you then. Feng Wu smacked her forehead. Was this really her brother, the young lord? Feng that was so proud and respectable in front of all the other young lords. Feng Wu had no choice but to say, fine. But there are 3 rules. 1. You can't make too much noise. Feng Sun nodded immediately. Yes, no problem. Feng Wu said, 2. Don't make trouble. Feng Sun said, of course. Even if you don't kill me, Boss Jun will. Feng Wu said, 3. You can't do anything I don't want you to do. Chapter 36-38 Chapter 36-38 Master Linghu 4 Chapter 36-38 Master Linghu 4 Feng Wu said, 3. You can't do anything I don't want you to do. Feng Sun nodded immediately. All right, I'll do it. Just then, Jun Linyuan walked in. He had a little boy with him. It was Bao Er. Bao Er looked eagerly at Jun Linyuan, but the teenager shook his head. You can't go. Suppressing her desire, Bao Er nodded and lowered her head. Jun Linyuan said solemnly, take her back. Teach her well these days. Don't miss a day. Granny Gong knew what the Crown Prince was like, and he meant every word. She nodded and led Bao Er away. Seeing the book stuck into Bao Er's belt, Feng Wu was speechless. Feng Wu still remembered her additional task. She had to make sure that Bao Er liked her. That way, her beautiful master would wake up for a longer time, but now was obviously not the time. She would have to wait. Do you want to train Bao Er into a scholar? Feng Wu looked at Jun Linyuan in bewilderment. Jun Linyuan shook his head. No. Feng Wu said, then why did you make her read so many books? She's not well enough. Jun Linyuan looked at Feng Wu. She can't cultivate. Feng Wu was confused. How can that be? She has the dragon phoenix blood from you and the divine phoenix blood from me. She should be the most talented person in the world. Why? Jun Linyuan stopped in front of Feng Wu's bed and looked into her eyes. He said in a serious tone, she has 2 rare bloodlines at the same time, but she's just an ordinary person. As expected, her body can't take it. In the end, her body simply sealed them up, making it impossible for her to cultivate. Feng Wu sighed. What a pity! Jun Linyuan was worried that Feng Wu would think too much, so he explained, her parents are just ordinary people and aren't very talented. It's only natural that she can't withstand such great power. I've made plans for her future. Don't worry. Feng Wu nodded. Fearing that Feng Wu would overthink it, Jun Linyuan added, if both parents have strong bloodlines, their babies won't be weak either. A baby born from the dragon phoenix blood and the divine phoenix blood won't be like Bao Er. Feng Wu nodded again, looking distracted. Feng Sun almost felt sorry roar Boss Jun. Boss Jun had made it so obvious, but Feng Wu was absent-minded. What Feng Sun didn't know was that Feng Wu was trying to figure out what to say to make Jun Linyuan agree to take Feng Sun with them. Ahem. Feng Sun reminded his silly sister. Feng Wu glanced at Feng Sun. Of course, she remembered. He didn't need to remind her. Feng Wu looked at Jun Linyuan. Are we leaving this afternoon? Yes. Jun Linyuan's tone remained emotionless when he talked to Feng Wu, but that was as far as he could go. Under normal circumstances, the Crown Prince was the most arrogant person. Feng Wu asked, can we take Feng Sun with us? Jun Linyuan glanced at Feng Sun. Feng Sun felt a chill run down his spine. Tugging at Jun Linyuan's sleeve, Feng Wu asked eagerly, can we bring him along? How could Jun Linyuan say no to such a request? The teenager rubbed her head. Yes. Chapter 36-39 Chapter 36-39 Travel 1. Chapter 36-39, Travel 1. The carriage set off in the afternoon. Feng Sun and Feng had to ride their horses, while Feng Wu sat lazily in the carriage. This carriage had definitely undergone shock-absorbing measures. The carriage sped along the way, but Feng Wu didn't feel any bumpiness on the road. The interior of this carriage was more than twice the size of an ordinary one. 2/3 of the space was occupied by a soft couch. Feng Wu could still lie down and even roll around. There were a total of 8 windows, and when they were opened, the sunlight shone on her face, making her sleepy. There were all kinds of mechanisms on the wall, and tea and snacks were all prepared and within Feng Wu's reach. Jun Linyuan only spent a few hours preparing for this trip, but everything was very well prepared. Nothing was out of the way. Jun Linyuan sat in the carriage with Feng Wu. There was a book in his hand. His eyes were lowered and he kept reading. The teenager had well-defined features and was already unbelievably beautiful. Now that the sun was shining on his face, he looked even more ethereal and graceful. It was impossible to describe how beautiful he was. All the spiritual essence in the world seemed to have concentrated on him. The Creator really liked him. Sensing Feng Wu's gaze, the teenager looked away from the book. "You're awake." His voice was clear, deep, and refreshing. He didn't look as terrifying as before. Ahem, Feng Wu struggled to get out of bed, but she was too weak. The next second, Jun Linyuan was by her side and put a cushion behind her. The cushion was specially made from the tiniest natural silk cotton. It was so soft that it almost wrapped around Feng Wu. "How are we going to get there?" The two of them were so close that Feng Wu changed the subject involuntarily. The teenager who had dared to point his sword at the Emperor carefully tucked Feng Wu in with a duvet, fearing that he might miss anything. He moved carefully and sincerely, as if he was doing something very important. After tucking the duvet in, he sat down, glanced at Feng Wu, and tossed her a booklet. He said coldly, "Read it yourself." Feng Wu thought to herself, "What? He was so gentle when he tucked me in, but he's being so rough now." However, Feng Wu was used to Jun Linyuan's two-faced behavior, so she wasn't offended. Instead, she read the map carefully. They had decided on the time and purpose of their trip. 3 months later, they would meet Huyin Yanba at the Northern Yen Palace. But they hadn't figured out how to get there yet. "What would you have gotten there if it were up to you?" Feng Wu looked up from the map and asked Jun Linyuan curiously. "I'll fly there," Jun Linyuan said succinctly. Feng Wu nodded. She knew it. Jun Linyuan was simply too powerful. As a spiritual saint, he was indeed capable of taking her all the way to Northern Yen by air. Moreover, it would save her a lot of time. "But Master Linghu said that we have to travel the world." Feng Wu grinned at Jun Linyuan. "Are you mad?" Jun Linyuan only looked at her without saying a word. Feng Wu answered for him as she flipped through the booklet. "You must be very angry." Crossing his arms, Jun Linyuan glanced at her. "Why do you say that?" Feng Wu snapped. Chapter 3640 Chapter 3640, Travel 2. Chapter 3640, Travel 2. Feng Wu said grumpily, "You hate trouble. Now that I've brought you so much trouble, I bet you don't like me very much." The teenager sat down in front of Feng Wu and kept his gaze on her. Feng Wu lowered her head. "In the end, you're going to travel with me for 3 months. That's not traveling at all. It's so boring. Am I right?" Jun Linyuan kept his gaze on Feng Wu and looked very serious. Feng Wu said, "Why are you looking at me like that? Am I wrong? We're going to meet so many weak people, and you're going to be so bored. You won't have that kind of patience. If I were you, I would be so annoyed." "I'm not annoyed." The teenager remained aloof. Feng Wu said, "No one said that you had to go with me to find that medicine, but you still did it. I owe you one, and I'll remember it." Jun Linyuan frowned and narrowed his eyes. Feng Wu was still mumbling. But since I've sent so many spiritual overlords to help our empire, no matter how reluctant you are, you have to help me. I've done you a great favor. She looked up at Jun Linyuan as she spoke. Her big eyes were clear and bright. Jun Linyuan had never met anyone like her. One moment, she was murmuring apologetically, and the next, she was making a bold request. Yes. He couldn't help but rub her head. I owe you. Now that Feng Wu didn't feel she owed Jun Linyuan anything, she became curious. I'm going to have a great tour of the Junwu Empire on my way there. You have no idea how hard I've been working in the past decade since I came here. I've never stopped to savor the real world. I haven't had a chance to enjoy anything. Since you came here? Jun Linyuan asked. Ahem. Feng Wu threw a dirty look at Jun Linyuan. That's how long I've been born for. Are you picking on me now? Anyone else who dared to stare at Jun Linyuan would probably be dead by now. However, under Feng Wu's clear gaze, Jun Linyuan didn't say anything and only nodded. Feng Wu said excitedly, Can we not travel by road all the time? We're near the Nanyang River, right? The narrow part of the river is hundreds of meters wide, and the widest part is thousands of meters wide. Hey, how about we take a boat and head west for a while? Jun Linyuan liked to hear Feng Wu's soft voice, so he crossed his arms, raised his chin, and said indifferently, No. As expected, the girl tugged at his sleeve and pleaded with her doe eyes. Please. Jun Linyuan remained silent. Feng Wu grew anxious. Let's go. It's so boring in a carriage. I'm tired of all the scenery around the imperial capital, and the road is so bumpy. It's not very comfortable. Let's take the waterway. It'll only take us a few days. After that, we won't have any waterway on our way west. All right? Jun Linyuan gave her a little tap on the head. You're such a sweet talker. Feng Wu wouldn't admit it. I'm not. It was a negotiation. Negotiation. Chapter 3641 Chapter 3641 Travel 3 Chapter 3641 Travel 3 Jun Linyuan only smiled when he heard the girl's protest. Outside, Feng Sun and Feng exchanged looks and both gave each other wry smiles. They decided to let the two of them carry on like this, wondering if this trip would make them realize how they felt about each other. I think Boss Jun has made up his mind. He just won't admit it. He's made it very obvious. Feng Sun lowered his voice. Feng nodded. We'll wait for Miss Wu to admit her true feelings. Well, I won't stay in their way. Feng turned to leave after that. He was soon out of sight. Feng Sun thought to himself, he's an incredible cultivator. Wait, they're still talking about whether to travel by land or water and haven't reached a conclusion yet. Where did Feng? By water. Feng's voice reached Feng Sun's ears. Feng Sun agreed. Every negotiation between Feng Wu and Boss Jun ended with Feng Wu winning. Yongzhou Pier. Feng had the boat ready when they arrived, and he was reporting to Jun Linyuan. Flying Star is His Majesty's dragon boat. It's 13 m tall, 60 m long, and has 4 floors. The top floor consists of the main hall, the inner hall, and the eastern and western courts. The middle floors are richly decorated and have 50 rooms in total. The lower floor. Jun Linyuan nodded. However, the more Feng Wu listened, the more confused she became. Such a big and luxurious dragon boat. How many of us are there? Feng Wu looked at Jun Linyuan in bewilderment. Jun Linyuan looked at Feng Wu, but before he could say anything, Feng said, Just the 4 of us. Feng Wu smiled bitterly. Are the 4 of us going to take such a big dragon boat together? That's a lot of attention. Plus, we're here to travel the world, not to show off. She looked eagerly at Jun Linyuan and tugged at his sleeve. Jun Linyuan looked at her in resignation. What do you want, then? The girl smiled, her bright eyes like crescent moons. How about we share a boat with other people? We'll pretend to be ordinary people. Don't ordinary people always share a boat with others? Jun Linyuan rubbed his forehead in resignation. As the crown prince of the empire, he had never known how to share a room with the common people. Jun Linyuan looked at Feng. Feng smiled. I'll make the arrangements then. After Feng left, Jun Linyuan looked at Feng Wu in resignation and saw that the girl was very excited. Wherever there are people, there's action. I'd like to see what it's like. Jun Linyuan crossed his arms and said grumpily, You won't like that world. Feng Wu said, But it's very real. Just think about it. You're the crown prince, and everyone will show you the side you prefer when they see you. It's not their true side. But now that we're in the crowd and dressed like ordinary people, everything we see is real. Moreover, Feng Wu gave it some thought and said slowly, I want to know if Master Linghu's plan is what I think it is. Jun Linyuan patted her head. I'm glad you like it. Feng Wu glanced at him. Jun Linyuan, you're so fairy-like. You should be more down to earth. The crown prince didn't say a word. Feng Wu said, This is the land you're going to rule in the future. These people are all your people, and you'll only realize that they're real when you're among them. Chapter 3642, Chapter 3642, Travel 4. Chapter 3642, Travel 4. People from all walks of life will all have their own stories. Some are fake and some are true. Feng Wu was full of anticipation. I want to feel the truth. I think our cultivation should be built on the truth. Jun Linyuan was dazed for a moment, as if Feng Wu's words had touched him. Something seemed to click in his head. Feng soon came back. A commoner's boat, Soaring Wing, will set sail in 15 minutes. It's neither too big nor too small. There are 10 luxurious rooms on the upper floor and 20 ordinary ones on the lower floor. Apart from 4 luxurious rooms on the upper floor, all the others are occupied. What's the route? Feng Wu asked. Feng said, It'll take us 8 days to reach the end of the river. Feng Wu raised her chin and asked Jun Linyuan, How about we take this Soaring Wing? Of course, Jun Linyuan wouldn't say no to her. He nodded in agreement. Feng knew it. He smiled and said, I've paid the deposit. We can board the boat now. As for the luxurious carriage, Feng would have someone drive it all the way to the end of the river to wait for them to finish their journey before setting off on the road again. Soaring Wing. Feng Sun and Feng would take care of everything so that Jun Linyuan and Feng Wu didn't have to. Jun Linyuan reached out to Feng Wu. Feng Wu shook her head. I'll try. Maybe I can walk on my own. The crown prince put down his hand and waited for her outside the carriage. Feng Wu struggled to sit up, but she was too weak to do anything. Her chest hurt, and after a few struggles, she could only lean back on the cushion and look at Jun Linyuan in resignation. Jun Linyuan didn't say a word. He only crossed his arms and looked at her with his brooding eyes. He had no intention of helping her. In the end, Feng Wu had no choice but to give the teenager a pleading look. It hurts. Jun Linyuan smiled a little, but he didn't move. Feng Wu was almost in tears. She reached out to Jun Linyuan for help. I can't stand up. Jun Linyuan nodded. Feng Wu stared at Jun Linyuan in frustration. She knew what Jun Linyuan was waiting for. He was waiting for her to beg him. How annoying. Feng Wu looked around and saw that Feng Sun had already jumped into the boat. Feng wasn't here either, and Jun Linyuan was the only one she could turn to. She looked at him and said softly, Brother Jun, please help me. Pursing his thin lips, Jun Linyuan finally went up to her and picked her up with gentle movements. Feng Wu snorted and complained in a low voice. You like it when I beg you. I knew it. Jun Linyuan didn't speak, but he was obviously very pleased. Feng Wu said, I won't have to beg you after I get better. Gosh, how can I be so stupid? I should have brought Qiuling with us. How could I have forgotten about her? Jun Linyuan, I want Xiaoling. Have Feng bring her to me. Feng Wu swayed his arm back and forth and pleaded in a low voice. But the crown prince only frowned and shook his head. Why not? It's very inconvenient for me without Xiaoling. Feng Wu frowned. Very, very inconvenient. A few steps away, Feng estimated the distance in his head. It would take him less than 5 minutes to fetch Xiaoling and come back. However, Jun Linyuan shook his head. Feng has left. Feng, who was about to step out, was dumbfounded. Chapter 3643 Chapter 3643 Together 1. Chapter 3643 Together 1. Feng was speechless. Rubbing his forehead, he took a few steps back. Feng Wu was as confused as Feng was. Where did Feng go? Didn't he have to look after us all the way? Jun Linyuan said indifferently. He's going to drive the carriage to Yong City at the end of the river. Yes, he'll wait for us there. Feng Wu asked, why didn't I know that? Jun Linyuan said, Feng only listens to me. Feng Wu had no choice but to accept reality. All right. Feng rubbed his nose. Yong City it is. He was on his way. Come here. Feng Sun waved at Jun Linyuan and Feng Wu. I've seen all the rooms. You can have the most luxurious one. Feng Wu suddenly remembered. Feng said earlier that he had booked 4 rooms. Jun Linyuan said calmly, he booked too many. Feng Wu didn't know what to say. Feng Wu and Jun Linyuan had a suite with 2 rooms facing the river. They could see everything along the way. Feng Sun looked out. Wait, where's Feng? Feng Wu sighed. Feng needs to drive the carriage. He's waiting for us in Yong City. Feng Sun was confused. What? Feng said. Feng Sun saw the look in Jun Linyuan's eyes and came back to himself right away. He smacked his forehead and said, Hey, how could I forget? Feng told me that he had to take the carriage there. You can't just find a special carriage like that anywhere. Feng Wu mumbled, Can't we put the carriage in the storage space and take it there? We need to have those special horses too. Well, that's the way it is. Feng Sun changed the subject. I asked around just then. There are all kinds of people on this boat. Feng Wu glanced at him. I'm not that interested in other people. After a pause, Feng Wu asked with twinkling eyes, Who are they? Feng Sun chuckled and told Feng Wu, Yours is the second largest suite on this ship, and there's the most luxurious one on your left. 1,000 gold coins a night. Feng Wu said, That's really expensive. Most people can't afford it. Cultivators like them could afford it because 1,000 gold coins were equivalent to 1 spiritual stone. Feng Wu even had blood origin crystals, so spiritual stones didn't mean much. He's a government official, said Feng Sun with a smile. He's Zhao Yi, the new mayor of Yong City, and he's a friend of the Dugu family. The Dugu family, Feng Wu frowned. Old Master Dugu wasn't involved last time, which means that he's pretty decent. However, Jun Linyuan snorted before Feng Wu could finish. Not necessarily. Feng Wu said, What's that? Jun Linyuan said. He watched the battle of the Zhou family the whole time. That old man has always taken advantage of the situation and never got involved. If he finds an opportunity, he'll show no mercy. Feng Wu said, So, he's very timid and cautious. Jun Linyuan nodded. And he's very good at waiting. He's still alive when all his contemporaries are dead. Feng Wu nodded. Does Master Zhao know any of you? Feng Sun said, Master Zhao never worked in the imperial capital before. He used to be a deputy in Yong City, and the former governor of Yong City is dead. He used his connection with the Dugu family to fill the gap. Anyway, I think there's something fishy about the death of the former governor of Yong City, but I can't say for sure without any evidence. Chapter 3644 Chapter 3644 Together, 2. Chapter 3644. Together, 2. Feng Sun said, "The second passenger is quite interesting. It's Qin Chi, the second son of Earl Nanfeng." Feng Wu asked curiously, "Do you know him?" Feng Sun chuckled. "We all grew up in the imperial capital, and I've met him a few times. I'm sure he'll recognize me. As for Boss Jun, I don't think he has. He's a scholar who's said to be better at reading books than dealing with the real world. However, after all these years, he hasn't gotten any position in any official institute, nor has he passed any official exams. His eldest brother will inherit his father's title. I don't know what will become of him. The third passenger is a local squire. He's round and chubby. One look and you could tell that he's from a wealthy family." Feng Sun then introduced the rest of the passengers to Feng Wu. "But they don't seem to be on friendly terms with each other." Feng Wu asked, "What? Is there a problem between them?" Feng Sun said, "Not really, but I think that local esquire is fawning on Zhao Yi. As for Qin Chi, I don't think he's very keen on Zhao Yi. I think they've had a row." Jun Linyuan rubbed his forehead in resignation. Why was the girl interested in these people? Why was she so energetic? "You're not strong enough. Having something to eat and get some rest." Jun Linyuan tucked Feng Wu in. Feng Wu wasn't really interested in the conflicts between these people. She just wanted to experience the real world and see how ordinary people live. She had been cultivating for too long. That time in northern border city was when Feng Wu felt that she was alive. After dinner, Jun Linyuan gave Feng Wu the spiritual saint liquid again. Whenever he created something himself, he would give it to Feng Wu. Although the spiritual saint liquid couldn't treat Feng Wu's wounds, it was still beneficial to her health. The next day, with Jun Linyuan's help, Feng Wu was able to get out of bed. The boat had been sailing for a while, and Feng Wu kept looking at the water. She was intrigued at first, but soon she grew tired of it. The so-called river scenery was actually quite boring after a while. Just then, they heard some noise outside. Many people were shouting. Feng Wu's eyes lit up. Jun Linyuan looked at her in resignation. The girl was curious again. Feng Wu tugged at Jun Linyuan's sleeve. "Let's go have a look. There's a row going on outside." Jun Linyuan looked at Feng Wu in resignation. Feng Wu said, "It's so boring on the boat. Let's go have a look. It's human nature to enjoy the show. Why are you looking at me like that? I'm just curious. Let's go have a look, shall we?" In fact, he enjoyed the process. Hearing her soft voice, he was so satisfied. Having no other choice, he picked Feng Wu up and was going to carry her out. "Just hold my arm. I think I can walk on my own now. I mean it. Let me try." Feng Wu was very stubborn. If she could walk with her own legs, she wouldn't need to ask Jun Linyuan for help. Jun Linyuan sighed and said yes in the end. Someone was indeed making a racket on the deck, and it turned out to be Qin Chi, whom Feng Sun was talking about. A lot of people were discussing among themselves when Feng Wu came out. Meanwhile, Qin Chi's minion was glaring at the ship's first mate. "No. You have to solve the problem for us. Otherwise, this ship isn't going anywhere today." Chapter 3645. Chapter 3645. Together, 3. Chapter 3645. Together, 3. Although the soaring wing wasn't an imperial ship, it was still a big one. The deck was narrow at two ends, and there was a courtyard in the middle. There were statues, trees, and plants, as well as wooden tables and chairs where one could sit down and have some tea. Feng Wu walked closer with Jun Linyuan's help and saw that the seats had been taken. "Xiao Wu, over here." Feng Sun waved at Feng Wu. Feng Wu couldn't believe it. No one could run faster than Feng Sun when it came to enjoying a good show. Feng Wu could only walk very slowly now. It took her forever to reach Feng Sun. As it turned out, Feng Sun had ordered a pot of tea, and there were snacks and pastries on the table. Feng Wu was speechless. As soon as Feng Wu sat down, she heard a middle-aged woman talking next to her. "What's that page boy doing? I think he's been asking the boatman for an explanation." Someone else said, "Well, it's all because of what happened last night. Don't you know?" "Know what?" "That scholarly man really is. He brought a girl onto the ship. You saw that, right? But she stole his money last night and jumped off the ship. Right now, he's asking the boatman to give him back his money." Feng Wu looked at Feng Sun in surprise. Was that even possible? Feng Sun nodded at Feng Wu as he ate the snacks. That was true. Qin Chi's servant wouldn't let go of the first mate. "I don't care. It was stolen on the boat. You have to take responsibility. Pay me back." Frustrated, the chief mate threw a dirty look at him. "Who knows if that girl is on your side or not? Maybe you're putting on a show together." Qin Kai was furious. "What did you say? We're in it with that girl? Do you know who my young master is? He's the second son of Lord Nanfeng. Why would he do something like that? Don't we have better things to do?" The chief mate frowned. He looked at Qin Chi. "Are you really the second son of Lord Nanfeng?" Qin Chi flapped his fan and looked down at the first mate. The first mate hesitated. If the passenger was from Lord Nanfeng's family, that was a problem. He couldn't make the decision, so he had to summon the captain. The chief officer's duty was to supervise the daily work of the deck, and the captain's responsibility was to manage and steer the ship. The captain's surname was Wu, and he was soon escorted out. He saw the token Qin Chi handed him and knew that the latter was the second son of the Qin family. Despite his bad luck, he still smiled obsequiously. "Young Master Qin, would you like to talk inside?" There were so many people watching. How were they supposed to talk it over? However, Oinchi acted as if he was trying to make a scene. He sat down, crossed his legs, and said arrogantly, "Let's not talk in the room. Let's do it right here. How do you think we're going to handle this?" Captain Wu smiled bitterly. "May I ask what's missing?" Qin Chi still had his legs crossed and was fanning himself. He then glanced at Qin Kai. Qin Kai raised his voice. "My young master has lost 100 spiritual stones. Pay it back." "Spiritual stones?" Captain Wu was frightened. "Spirit stones? So many?" Qin Kai said, "Of course. Earl Nanfeng isn't just anybody. Do you think my young master will travel with gold coins? He uses spiritual stones, of course." Captain Wu frowned. "Have you checked everything? Is it really missing?" Chapter 3646, Chapter 3646. Together, 4. Chapter 3646. Together, 4. Qin Kai looked down on Captain Wu. "What do you mean? If you don't believe me, bring people to search our room." Captain Wu asked, "What's young Master Qin's request, then?" Qin Kai looked at his young master. Qin Chi smirked and said casually, "First of all, you'll have to pay back my 100 spiritual stones. Secondly, take the ship back to the pier from yesterday." Before Captain Wu could say anything, the onlookers shook their heads. "No, you can't do that. Young Master Qin doesn't own this ship. He can't make it return just because he says so." "That's right. I'm in a hurry to get to Yong City, and it'll take me 2 more days if the ship goes back to that pier. I'm in a hurry to get married. My mother is seriously ill, and we can't afford even a day's delay. Captain, we can't go back." Almost everyone objected. Qin Chi's face darkened, and he gave the others a threatening look. But there were all kinds of people on this ship, and not everyone was intimidated by the power of the Earl of Nanfeng. In the end, Captain Wu said, "We can't go back. Since we've sailed out, we'll only carry on our journey. Young Master Qin, I'm sorry about that." As for the spiritual stones, Captain Wu said with a frown, "Since young Master Qin brought the thief himself, It has nothing to do with our ship. Young Master Qin, you can solve the problem yourself. Soaring Wing will help you look for that girl. As for if they could find her, that wasn't Captain Wu's concern. Qin Shi didn't expect Captain Wu to be so stubborn. He smacked the table and said, "You don't know who you're dealing with." Infuriated, Qin Shi activated his spiritual essence. Although Feng Wu couldn't activate her spiritual essence now, she could still recognize it. Is he a level 3 spiritual master? Feng Wu asked Jun Linyuan, sounding uncertain. Jun Linyuan nodded. Feng Wu said, "How nostalgic. I was a level 3 spiritual master only a short while ago. Looking back now, it feels like a lifetime ago." The spiritual master stage was only the entry level. After that, there were the stages of spiritual grandmaster, spiritual elder, spiritual lord, spiritual king, spiritual overlord, and so on. Qin Shi was only a level 3 spiritual master, and he was already showing off his power on this ship. His fist cracked the table in front of him. Qin Shi smirked. "If you don't go back now, I'm going to break this ship into pieces. Everyone will die." Captain Wu glared at him. Qin Shi smirked. "That's how willful I am. So what? Bite me." Everyone was displeased. The middle-aged woman behind Feng Wu said, "Young lords are so arrogant. None of them are decent people." Feng Wu glanced at Feng Sun and saw that he was indeed angry. He rose to his feet and was ready to beat Qin Shi up. Just then, Captain Wu said, "This ship belongs to the Northern Feng Mansion. It used to be an official ship, but it has become a civilian one. Young Master Qin, are you sure you want to oppose the Northern Feng Mansion?" Feng Wu looked at Feng Sun in bewilderment and mouthed, "Is it yours?" Feng Sun said, "Wing is indeed my mother's business, and this soaring wing is my family's." Feng Wu said, "Why are you watching the show as a bystander then? Didn't they recognize you?" Feng Sun said, "My mother has at least 100 businesses, not to mention that this is only one of the ships. It's only normal that they don't know me." Chapter 3647 Chapter 3647 Comfort the Teenager 1 Chapter 3647 Comfort the Teenager 1 Qin Shi didn't expect that Captain Wu would bring up the Northern Feng Mansion, and he frowned. "Stop trying to scare me." Captain Wu smiled bitterly. "I'm telling the truth." Qin Shi asked, "Then why haven't I heard of it before?" Captain Wu said, "We've always kept a low profile and wouldn't abuse our power. It's only normal that young Master Qin hasn't heard about us before. Many people on board don't know about it either." Qin Shi said, "So what if you're the Northern Feng Mansion's business? I lost my spiritual stones." Captain Wu said, "That's your own business. Plus, did the girl you brought just steal your spiritual stones?" Qin Shi was shocked. "What do you mean?" Just then, a voice rang out. "I've lost 50 spiritual stones, too. I've lost 100. I lost 1,000 spiritual stones last night. Young Master Qin, did that girl you brought steal all our spiritual stones?" "Young Master Qin, don't go. Since you brought the thief aboard, you have to give us back our spiritual stones." "Young Master Qin." Qin Yen was so frustrated that he didn't dare to stay here. He and Qin Kai hid in their room and didn't dare to come out again. The first mate went up to Feng Wu and thanked her in a low voice. As it turned out, the passengers started saying they had lost spiritual stones because Feng Wu came up with that idea. Feng Wu waved him off. "You're welcome. I just don't like that arrogant man." Once the first mate was gone, Feng Sun said angrily, "He's the one who has ruined the reputation of all the young lords. He's just a level 3 spiritual master. How dare he act so arrogantly? Why hasn't he been killed yet? Xiao Wu, if you hadn't made that move, I would have taught him a lesson," said Feng Sun grumpily. Feng Wu chuckled. If you beat him up, you'll blow your cover and become the center of attention on this ship. Do you like that feeling? Feng Sun agreed with her. Qin was scared out of his wits when Captain Wu mentioned the Northern Feng Mansion. If Feng Sun showed up in person, Qin would probably jump off the ship right away. Feng Wu smiled. I remember when that young Master Qin left. He talked to Captain Wu about how he and young Lord Feng were good friends. Do you really know each other? Feng Sun smiled bitterly. We've only met once in a while from a distance away. We're not friends at all. I won't have such an arrogant and cowardly buddy. How dare he? Feng Wu chuckled. Captain Wu doesn't seem convinced. Feng Sun said, Captain Wu is a cautious man, isn't he? Well, I need to warn Qin so that he won't ruin my reputation. Feng Wu was still laughing when she heard a cold voice. Enjoying yourself. Only then did Feng Wu remember that Jun Linyuan was with her. She had been too busy enjoying the show to notice him. Seeing the smile on her face, Jun Linyuan couldn't understand why she and Feng Sun were so happy. They could have all the fun they wanted, but he couldn't get involved. The more he thought about it, the darker his face became. Hey, why is it getting darker? Clouds are rolling in. Is there going to be lightning and thunder? Chapter 3648 Chapter 3648 Comfort the Teenager 2 Chapter 3648 Comfort the Teenager 2 It's like this in the middle of the year. 1 minute, it's sunny, and the next minute, there's a downpour. Come, let's go back to our rooms. The sun was so bright, the old lady behind Feng Wu sighed and led her grandson back to the lower cabin. Feng Wu didn't know what to say. Looking around, she saw that everyone had run off in such a short time, fearing that they might get caught in the rain. Even the first mate had come out to urge Feng Wu and Jun Linyuan to go inside. A storm was coming. Feng Wu said, Yes, of course. We'll go in right away. But in fact, Feng Wu had been looking at Jun Linyuan the whole time. Feng Wu looked up at the sky, then at his stunning face again. Are you in a bad mood? Feng Wu asked gingerly. Jun Linyuan didn't even look at Feng Wu. He only stared at the surging river outside the ship. Feng Wu watched as the river suddenly rose 10 meters into the air. The water then splashed onto the deck and overturned a tree. Feng Wu didn't know what to say. She tried to appease him. Well, are you hungry? Let's go eat. Jun Linyuan bit his lower lip and wouldn't look at her. Thunder rumbled, and streaks of purple lightning flashed across the sky. It was a terrifying scene. Feng Wu licked her lips. Somehow, she felt that the abnormal phenomenon had something to do with Jun Linyuan's mood. Feng Wu feigned a complaining tone. What's wrong with Feng Sun? Why is he so interested in these things? I'm not. I have no interest in them at all. What's so interesting about these strangers? I'd rather talk to Boss Jun. Don't call me that. Jun Linyuan wasn't very happy. Brother Jun. Brother Jun. Feng Wu tugged at Jun Linyuan's sleeve. My legs are a little numb. As she spoke, Feng Wu tried to stand up, but she stumbled and fell in Jun Linyuan's direction. Jun Linyuan patted her head in resignation. Are you an idiot? You can't even walk. He then picked her up. Feng Wu said, I can walk. Let me walk. Jun Linyuan snorted. Are you sure? He looked like he was going to let go. Feng Wu tugged at his clothes in a pitiful manner. Seeing the panic-stricken look on the girl's face, Jun Linyuan smiled and seemed to be in a good mood. When he carried Feng Wu back to her room, the dark clouds dissipated and the sky was clear again. The water was so calm that it wouldn't stir up waves that were dozens of meters high. The first mate was finally relieved. He said to Captain Wu, The weather is so strange, and so is the river. There's something so mysterious about this trip. Captain Wu nodded. Pass down the order. Keep your eyes open and don't slack off. The first mate asked curiously, Do you think there's something wrong with this trip as well? Captain Wu nodded. It's true. The journey has been very strange, and we have to be very careful. Everything else is fine. We have to deliver the cargo without a scratch. At the mention of the cargo, the chief officer straightened his back and said solemnly, That's right. We can't afford to lose anything. Otherwise, I'm afraid we won't get off this ship alive. Only Captain Wu and his first mate seemed to know about the cargo. However, ordinary people would never know how acute a cultivator's hearing could be. Chapter 3649 Chapter 3649 Comfort the Teenager, 3. Chapter 3649 Comfort the Teenager, 3. For instance, Jun Linyuan heard their conversation. But he didn't like to meddle in other people's business, so he ignored them. Feng Sun heard it as well. He rushed into the room. Xiao Wu, Xiao Wu. Xiao Wu was trying to let the crown prince have something to eat. Hearing Feng Sun's yelling, Jun Linyuan frowned. Seeing this, Feng Wu said in a hurry, I'm sure Feng Sun has something important to say. I'll answer the door. Feng Sun came in, sat down in front of Jun Linyuan and said cheerfully, Teehee, I just found out. There's going to be a good show tonight. Feng Sun grinned after that. Feng Wu looked at him in bewilderment. What show? Only then did Feng Sun realize that Feng Wu was there. He waved at her and said, It's not appropriate for a young lady. Go get me something to eat. Feng Wu stared at Feng Sun with a half-smile. Feng Sun, what did you say? She was so close to grabbing him by the ear. Feng Sun realized right away that his sister wasn't just any young lady. All right, enjoy your meal. He dashed off after that. Feng Wu didn't know what to say. She looked at Jun Linyuan in bewilderment. What on earth is he doing, running up and down the ship? After that, Feng Wu opened the window and looked down. She saw that Feng Sun and Qin Qi were walking down the stairs together. It was almost dark and the deck was lit up by candles. Feng Wu asked Jun Linyuan curiously, What are Feng Sun and Qin Qi talking about? Jun Linyuan could hear their conversation. Being a spiritual saint, nothing on this ship could get past him. He glanced at Feng Wu. Feng Wu knew that as well, so she went up to Jun Linyuan and tugged at his sleeve. Just tell me. What's Feng Sun doing? It looks so mysterious. Jun Linyuan patted his head. Why are you so curious? You should go to bed. Feng Wu wouldn't have it. Why should I go to bed so early? I can't sleep. Just then, they heard voices outside. Feng Wu looked out of the window curiously and saw that quite a few pretty boats were approaching. The boats weren't as tall as the soaring wing, so people kept putting down ladders. Feng Wu saw dozens of beautiful women in fluffy dresses, and many men were sitting around them. The women were dancing gracefully. As they danced, they took off their thin clothes until they were down to their underwear. Leaning against the window, Feng Wu looked down and was amazed. I didn't know you had such exciting activities here. Feng Wu had seen it before. In modern times, it was called a striptease. Back then, she had visited a stripper club in person. A pretty woman used to dance around Feng Wu's legs to liven up the mood. Feng Wu even generously stuffed some cash into the girl's bra. It was an interesting experience. Jun Linyuan didn't even need to look to know what was going on down there. He rubbed his temples when he saw Feng Wu's eyes light up. What a rebellious girl. No daughter of a good family would be amazed by such things. Not only was Feng Wu enjoying the show, but she was also pointing around and making comments. The one next to Feng Sun must be the most popular woman. She has such a tiny waist. Chapter 3650 Chapter 3650 Comfort the Teenager, 4. Chapter 3650 Comfort the Teenager, 4. Qin Qi is such a dog. The dancer on his lap is the hottest and has the most ample breasts. Look at those long legs. She's so sexy. Wait, isn't that Mayor Zhao? Isn't he supposed to be very reserved? Why is he on the deck now? Jun Linyuan, look. Mayor Zhao wants that dancer next to Qinqi, and he's trying to seduce her with money. Look, he's stuffed a stack into her bra. Gosh, has Qinqi really been stolen, or did he try to trick Captain Wu? He still has spiritual stones with him. Look, he stuffed them into that dancer's bra. Do both of them like big boobs? Feng Wu looked from herself to the dancing girl and was frustrated. Jun Linyuan stared at the girl as if she was a monster. He had no idea that Feng Wu had this side. When she talked about traveling the world, she was so absorbed in it that she didn't even think about cultivation. However, Jun Linyuan felt that she was as wild as a cat. Feng Wu wouldn't stop egging him on. Shall we go down there? Jun Linyuan, how about we have some fun together? Jun Linyuan stared at Feng Wu, looking displeased. Feng Wu didn't notice his displeasure and was only immersed in her excitement. It's such a rare event. We won't know when we'll see it again. I'm just curious. I wonder if it's any different from what I knew before. Jun Linyuan rolled his eyes at her. Are you sure they'll keep dancing when you go down there, looking like this? Feng Wu was too beautiful to be ignored. Those women would definitely be affected. Feng Wu agreed. The people here probably weren't used to girls watching such dances and would find it astonishing. Although she had always been indifferent to other people's opinions, Jun Linyuan didn't like it. Shall I disguise myself as a man then? She got to work right away. Without waiting for Jun Linyuan's reply, Feng Wu began to dress herself up as a man. It was a piece of cake for her. Soon, Jun Linyuan saw a handsome teenager. She was as good-looking as Jun Linyuan was. Moreover, the girl loved to smile, which was as warm and bright as the sun. It cheered up those who had dark thoughts. Jun Linyuan was a little taken aback when he saw Feng Wu dressed as a man. Even in such a disguise, she was still breathtaking. Feng Wu took Jun Linyuan's hand. Help me walk. I may trip. Jun Linyuan looked at Feng Wu in resignation. Feng Wu pouted. I can't use my spiritual essence, and it's been so boring. If I don't find something to do, I'll be bored to death. I'm so miserable. Jun Linyuan didn't know what to do with her. He sighed and said, This is the last time. Feng Wu's eyes lit up and she nodded happily. No problem. Jun Linyuan knew that she was only saying that to get what she wanted, but every time she pleaded in her soft voice, he would grant all her requests. Feng Wu tugged at his sleeve. Let's go, or the event will be over. Chapter 3651 Chapter 3651 Courting Women 1 Chapter 3651 Courting Women 1 Jun Linyuan stopped Feng Wu. Do you really know what's going on here? He had thought that Feng Wu was just an ignorant little girl. Feng Wu smiled. These men are enjoying some female company. How could I not know what they're doing? Frowning, Jun Linyuan stared at her with a sharp gaze. Are you familiar with this? Jun Linyuan's voice was cold. Ahem, Feng Wu almost choked on her own saliva. She looked up at him and said, I was curious, so I asked Feng Sun about it. Gosh, you're so talkative. Let's go downstairs. She tugged at his sleeve, and they went down to the deck together. Because this was a man's activity, the square table on the deck was filled with men. It was almost full. Feng Sun was watching happily when he saw someone coming down the stairs, and he glanced in that direction. He was drinking his tea, but what he saw almost made him spit it out. Boss Jun. Boss Jun would actually come to such an occasion? It was really incredible. Wait, who was that person behind Boss Jun? The moment Feng Wu showed her face, Feng Sun spat out the tea in his mouth. What's going on? Qinqi already knew who Feng Sun was, so he was trying his best to fawn at the latter. Seeing how exaggerated Feng Sun's reaction was, he moved closer. Even the dancer beside them slowed down and changed to a gentle dance. She turned her head as well. One look and the dancer was stunned. She even forgot to dance. Two teenagers looked like gods from above. The first one was tall and had a stern look on his face. Dressed in a brocade robe, he looked so majestic and proud. The one behind him was a little shorter but had delicate features. His skin was much fairer and smoother than a woman's. The dancer considered herself to be an outstanding beauty, but she felt she was nothing compared to that teenager. His white robe was spotless, and he had a folding fan in his hand. He walked with a smile on his face, and there were dimples at the corner of his mouth. He looked so handsome. How could there be such outstanding teenagers on this ship? She had thought that Feng Sun, the blue-robed teenager, was already an outstanding young man, but as it turned out, the two newcomers. What was going on here today? The dancer was secretly rejoicing. A hush fell over the crowd as soon as Feng Wu and Jun Linyuan came out, and everyone turned to look at them. Qin Shi was astonished. He had never met Jun Linyuan before, but Qin Shi had guessed it from Feng Sun's attitude toward him. Moreover, Jun Linyuan was the only person in the world that could look that way. Jun, Qin Shi's knees buckled, and he almost dropped to his knees. Is it him? Is it really him? Qin Shi's voice was trembling as he stared at Feng Sun. Feng Sun gave him a warning look. Qin Shi covered his mouth, fearing that he would make another noise. But he was very sure now. This was Jun Linyuan. It had to be him. And the one next to him. Qin Shi's eyes widened when he recalled the pretty girl he had met earlier today. Grabbing Feng Sun, he said, "Isn't that shorter teenager that stunning girl from earlier?" Chapter 3652 Chapter 3652 Courting Women 2 Chapter 3652 Courting Women 2 Feng Sun gave Qin Shi another warning look. "Watch your mouth," Qin Shi said. "I know. No, I don't know. I don't know anything." Feng Sun knew that Qin Shi wouldn't dare to tell anyone. After all, Jun Linyuan's name could scare the crap out of all the influential families in the imperial capital. Feng Sun waved at Feng Wu. "Over here." Feng Sun and Qin Shi had been sitting at the same table, but after Qin Shi realized what had happened, he quickly moved to the next table. Immediately after that, he rushed back and took away his plate as well. A few steps away, the servant was dumbfounded. Serving dishes? Shouldn't they be the ones doing it? Why did young Master Qin do it himself? That wasn't appropriate. The dancer lowered her gaze and had an idea of her own. Qin Shi was fawning over young Master Feng, who was so friendly toward the two young masters. So, these two young masters were probably the most prestigious ones here. The dancer wondered what their real identities were. Feng Wu smiled brightly and sat down next to Feng Sun. Jun Linyuan, on the other hand, looked very unapproachable. Feng Sun looked from Jun Linyuan to Feng Wu and decided to talk to her. Lowering his voice, he asked Feng Wu in a low voice that only the two of them could hear, "Hey, what's wrong with you? Do you know what place this is? How could you come here?" Disguised as a man, Feng Wu looked very handsome. Together with the way she flapped her fan, she looked like a noble young master. Even Jun Linyuan wasn't as good-looking as her, let alone Feng Sun. Covering the lower half of her face with her fan, Feng Wu raised an eyebrow and glanced at Feng Sun. "How do I look?" Feng Sun said in jealousy. "What do you think? Can't you see those dancers, who have been staring at me, want to jump at you now?" Feng Wu beamed at him. "Of course. A commoner like you can't possibly be my match." Feng Sun clicked his tongue. He finally saw that the girl was very playful and rebellious. She didn't care about any rules, which reminded him a little of Jun Linyuan. Feng Sun rolled his eyes at Boss Jun. "Aren't you going to do something about?" Jun Linyuan snorted. "Do something about her? How?" The girl would sway his sleeve back and forth, and call him Brother Jun. He would get the moon for her if she wanted to. Attending such an event was nothing. Of course, the crown prince all thought to himself. He glanced at Feng Sun. Aren't you supposed to be her big brother? Feng Sun rolled his eyes. It's none of my business. Jun Linyuan smirked. It was as if he could control her. The girl was a little fiend. Seeing the look on Jun Linyuan's face, Feng Sun knew that there was nothing he could do. He could only comfort himself with a wry smile. Well, there are only female dancers. She'll just watch and satisfy her curiosity. Nothing will happen. Feng Sun rubbed his chin. If those were male dancers, someone might already be killed by now. While Feng Sun and Jun Linyuan were talking, Feng Wu asked the dancers to start dancing again. Feng Wu noticed that there were 12 dancers in total. Chapter 3653 Chapter 3653 Courting Women 3 Chapter 3653 Courting Women 3 The two most outstanding ones were the ones she had pointed out to Jun Linyuan in the room earlier. Feng Wu realized that they were all named after flowers. One was called Miss Lotus. One was called Tuberose. Master Zhao wouldn't let go of Miss Lotus. Tuberose, on the other hand, was the dancer who had been with Feng Sun earlier. The rest of the dancers were also named after flowers. Some were called Miss Rose and some were called Pansy or Freesia. But Miss Lotus and Tuberose were the best. Right now, Miss Lotus was standing next to Master Zhao. Master Zhao wasn't alone. He had 2 servants with him. Tuberose had been dancing around Feng Wu. To her, Feng Wu and Jun Linyuan were equally outstanding, but Feng Wu seemed to be an unsophisticated young master who would spend a lot of money. The other one, on the other hand, was unapproachable. Hence, she put all her attention on Feng Wu. She danced around Feng Wu for a while before moving closer to Qin Qi. She then came back and danced between Feng Wu's legs. She was doing everything she could. This is great. Feng Wu took out some money and stuffed it into Tuberose's clothes. She was moving around so much that Feng Wu had to stuff the money into her bra. Seeing how generous Feng Wu was, Tuberose decided that she was going to stay by Feng Wu's side tonight. Jun Linyuan was speechless. He saw the way the girl clapped, cheered, and rewarded the dancer like a veteran. Feng Sun gave him a sympathetic look. Feng Wu was the one who enjoyed the event here, and she had outshone all the real men here. On any other day, Qin Qi wouldn't have let anyone steal his thunder, but he didn't dare to do that now. He could only steal glances at Feng Wu with an indescribable look in his eyes. Seeing that Boss Jun's face was getting darker and darker, Feng Sun couldn't stand it anymore. Holding a silver note, he beckoned Tuberose over. It wasn't like Tuberose didn't care about money. Swinging her arms, she headed for Feng Sun. Feng Sun glanced at Feng Wu in satisfaction. However, Feng Wu didn't have time to meet his gaze. As soon as Tuberose left, other dancers began to move toward Feng Wu. Rose and Freesia would have come as well, but Miss Lotus was the first to take the seat, and the others didn't dare to come. Miss Lotus was the dancer Feng Wu had been talking about. She was a top-heavy woman with a tiny waist and long legs. As she danced around Feng Wu's legs, she put Feng Wu's hands on her waist and danced with her. Holy crap! Feng Sun couldn't believe his eyes. These women knew how to play. Xiao Wu was so amazing. Feng Sun couldn't bring himself to look at Boss Jun anymore. The guy hadn't lost his temper yet, and that took a lot of self-control. Feng Sun felt the temperature drop for a split second. Seeing that Feng Wu's seat had been taken, Tuberose, who had been dancing around Feng Sun, grew anxious. She quickly moved toward Feng Wu, and Feng Sun couldn't stop her. In the end, the two most popular girls, Tuberose and Miss Lotus, competed with each other in front of Feng Wu, doing everything they could to show off their graceful bodies. Feng Sun and Qin Qi exchanged complicated looks. Chapter 3654 Chapter 3654 Courting Women 4. Chapter 3654 Courting Women 4. Just then. Thump! The sound of a teacup hitting the floor startled everyone. Feng Sun and the others turned their heads and saw that it was the neglected Master Zhao. Zhao Yi was the soon-to-be mayor of Yong City and a fourth-ranked official. A high-ranking official didn't mean much in the imperial capital because a mere porter in the imperial capital might be able to crush a fifth-ranked official. However, things would be different once they were outside the imperial capital. Zhao Yi asked, "What tea is this? It tastes awful." He threw the teacup in Feng Wu's direction. However, he restrained himself and didn't dare to hit Feng Wu directly. Instead, he smashed the cup at Miss Lotus's feet, splashing tea all over the floor. The first reaction of the dancers was to stumble back. Feng Wu frowned and glanced at Zhao Yi, looking displeased. "What's wrong with you? Why did you do that?" Since she was trying to experience the world, Feng Wu didn't like to be disturbed. Zhao Yi smirked. He didn't say anything, but his entourage said sarcastically, "It was just an accident. How unlucky. Young master, sorry about that." Master Zhao couldn't be bothered to talk to her, so he let his servant speak instead. Master Zhao smirked and stared at Miss Lotus. "Get your ass over here." Frightened, Miss Lotus turned to Feng Wu for help. Zhao Heng, Master Zhao's entourage, was a tall, burly man. One look and one could tell that he was Zhao Yi's guard. He walked up to Miss Lotus, grabbed her, and threw her at Zhao Yi's feet. The impact brought tears to Miss Lotus's eyes, but she didn't dare to fight back. Those who could live in luxurious cabins had to be very well connected. Zhao Heng picked up Miss Lotus as if she was a chicken. "I'll take her upstairs now." Zhao Yi nodded. Feng Wu narrowed her eyes. What was going on? Why did he have to give her attitude when he was trying to take her dancer away? Zhao Yi rose to his feet, threw a contemptuous look at Feng Wu, and crossed his hands behind his back. He was about to go upstairs. "Hey, wait!" Feng Wu didn't have the strength to stand up. She leaned back in her chair, unrolled her fan, and looked at Zhao Yi in an indifferent manner. A hush fell over the crowd, and the dancers moved aside, not daring to utter a word. They had a feeling that the two of them were going to break into a fight. Feng Sun glanced at Jun Linyuan. How did it feel to have a girlfriend fighting with another man over a woman? Jun Linyuan rubbed his forehead in resignation, but he didn't say anything in the end. Feng Sun realized that Boss Jun didn't seem to want to stand up for Feng Wu. Should he go help the girl? Feng Sun didn't know what to think if he was going to help Feng Wu take the woman away. "Zhao Yi, are you going to leave just like that?" Feng Wu glanced at him. "Zhao Yi." Sir Zhao halted and turned to stare at Feng Wu. Not many people knew his real name and dared to call him by his full name. "May I ask who you are?" Master Zhao stared at Feng Wu with a straight face. Feng Wu smiled a little. "Who am I? Are you ready to hear my name?" She played an arrogant wastrel to the tea. Chapter 3655 Chapter 3655 Who Do You Choose? 1. Chapter 3655 Who Do You Choose? 1. He complained inwardly. He didn't even know how to do that. Xiao Wu was such a genius. Zhao Yi was clearly frightened. "Which family are you from? Who gave you the courage to be so arrogant?" Zhao Yi tried to probe Feng Wu. Feng Wu smirked. "Which family? My family owns this ship." "This ship? The Northern Feng Mansion?" Zhao Yi stared at Feng Wu. Feng Wu gave no reply. Zhao Yi smirked. "Northern Feng General only has one son, and his name is Feng Sun. He's a spiritual overlord and His Royal Highness's best friend. Are you saying you're him?" "What?" Immediately, all eyes were on Feng Wu, and Feng Sun was staring at her as well. "Gosh. I'm sitting right next to you, And you're blaming it on me? If my mother hears about this, I'll be whipped. Feng Sun turned to Feng Wu for help, but Feng Wu only gave Zhao Yi a half-smile. Of course. What's the point of talking about my social status in a place like this? It'll be abusing my power. Zhao Yi was speechless. Feng Wu smiled at Zhao Yi. You don't look that young anymore. You're in your 40s, aren't you? It's not every day that you get to be a governor. You'd better keep that position while you can. Zhao Yi stared at Feng Wu. He wasn't sure if the young man was telling the truth. If he really was young Lord Feng, Zhao Yi knew he would definitely lose this battle. If he wasn't young Lord Feng, even Qin Shi, the second son of Earl Nanfeng, had given his seat to that man. He had to be a very important person. At that thought, Zhao Yi stared at Feng Wu. You're definitely not young Lord Feng. Who on earth are you? Feng Wu flapped her fan and gave him a half-smile. Zhao Yi said, I know Dugu Mengshi. He's the son of the Dugu family. Do you know him? Dugu Mengshi? Feng Wu recognized that name. He used to be with Feng Lu, but Feng Wu had taught him a lesson. He had been running away from Feng Wu since then. Feng Wu said, It's been a while since I last saw him. Why? Are you on friendly terms with him? Zhao Yi only said that to show that he had connections with the Dugu family and to warn Feng Wu not to be too arrogant. Hearing that, Zhao Yi had an idea. He decided that the young man was indeed from an influential family, but he wasn't too important because he couldn't even get Dugu Mengshi's help. At that thought, Zhao Yi sneered at Feng Wu. I'm going to have Miss Lotus tonight. Feng Wu shook her head. That won't do. Everything has to be consensual. Mississippi Lotus doesn't like you. You can't force her. Zhao Yi smirked. Are you saying she likes you? Feng Wu chuckled. All young women like good-looking people. Aren't I good-looking? Zhao Yi didn't know what to say. Of course, he was good-looking. He was a handsome teenager with a casual air about him. Even if he didn't spend any money, his good looks would get him into every door. Feng Sun and Qin Shi exchanged looks. None of them was as popular as Feng Wu, and they had to admit their defeat. Feng Sun stole another glance at Boss Jun, and as expected, Boss Jun's cheek was twitching. Feng Wu even asked Miss Lotus, Do you want to go with him? No one will force you if you don't want to. Miss Lotus was put in a difficult spot. Needless to say, she wanted to keep the young master company, for he was indeed too handsome. He had a nice smile and a nice voice. She had never met anyone as beautiful as he was. Chapter 3656 Chapter 3656 Who do you choose to? Chapter 3656 Who do you choose to? But he was too prestigious, and Miss Lotus felt she wasn't good enough. She wondered if the teenager was more prestigious than Zhao Yi. Zhao Yi gloated. Dugu Ling is my godfather. Young man, I don't care who you are. You won't dare offend the Dugu family. Feng Wu was surprised. Dugu Ling is your godfather? He's not much older than you, is he? Zhao Yi was rendered speechless, and his face went scarlet red. You don't even dare to tell me your real name. You're just a fake. I'll write a letter to the Dugu family now, and they'll know who you are. Feng Wu said, The Dugu family is just like any other family. Zhao Yi smirked. You don't even respect the Dugu family? Do you think you're His Royal Highness? The Dugu family is the Empress's family, as well as the second prince's. Even His Majesty has to address Dugu Ling as his uncle. Zhao Yi referred to Dugu Ling as his godfather, which meant he was very close to that family. After Zhao Yi showed his strength, Miss Lotus went up to him. Zhao Yi laughed. He gave Feng Wu a gloating look as he put his arm around Miss Lotus, then left with her. Feng Sun was dumbfounded. As a matter of fact, if Feng Wu had really tried, Miss Lotus would have come with her. The mayor of Yong City was nothing. How could you live with that? Feng Sun couldn't believe his eyes. Feng Wu rolled her eyes at him. What was I supposed to do? What would I do if she spends the night in my room? I can't sleep with her, can I? Feng Sun cleared his throat. Just then, Tubros was about to move closer to Feng Wu when Qin Shi stopped her and reminded her in a low voice, "We can't afford to offend that master. Stay out of trouble." Tubros said, "But didn't he lose to Sir Zhao? That means Sir Zhao is better than him." Qin Shi said, "No, that's not what happened. That young master only needs to flick his fingers, and Zhao Yi has to kneel. He just couldn't be bothered to do that. Come and have some fun with me." After that, Qin Shi took her back to his room. Meanwhile, Jun Linyuan's face had turned livid. Turning around, Feng Wu saw that her brother Jun was genuinely angry. She cleared her throat and said, "It's late. We should go to bed." After that, she rose to her feet and walked up the stairs. Jun Linyuan followed her as soon as she left. His shadow completely enveloped Feng Wu. Thump! The door closed. The Crown Prince glared at Feng Wu. "Were you having fun?" Feng Wu sat down on a chair and flapped her fan. She then glanced at Jun Linyuan and said, "The atmosphere isn't right tonight. If that was a civilized banquet, I could write poems that would make them the most famous dancers." Jun Linyuan rubbed his forehead. The more she thought about it, the more pleased Feng Wu became. What a pity! Why did Zhao Yi try to sabotage everything? I didn't get to write any poems. That might be the biggest regret in my life. Jun Linyuan couldn't bring himself to be mad at her. In the end, he patted her on the head. "What on earth are you thinking all the time? Why did you enjoy that kind of thing so much?" Feng Wu stared at Jun Linyuan in disbelief. "Are you a saint of something? Can't you feel a thing when such a pretty woman dances around you?" Jun Linyuan's face darkened. Feng Wu said, "I had a lot of fun. Next time." Jun Linyuan said angrily, "What next time?" Chapter 3657 Chapter 3657 Who Do You Choose? 3. Chapter 3657 Who Do You Choose? 3. Feng Wu cringed. "No, there won't be a next time." Only then did Jun Linyuan look a little happier. Feng Wu mumbled. Jun Linyuan glared at her. "What did you say?" Feng Wu said gingerly, "Why couldn't you enjoy it? That's just silly." The Crown Prince said, "What?" Feng Wu said, "No, I didn't say anything." Jun Linyuan was a little mad at the girl, and he stuffed her under the blanket. "Go to sleep." Feng Wu's face was covered. "HMI." Jun Linyuan knocked her on the head over the blanket. "Be quiet. Sleep." Feng Wu closed her eyes, knowing that she couldn't fight back. She was as weak as she was before she started cultivating. After that night's event, she was exhausted. She fell asleep almost right away. Jun Linyuan watched in disbelief as Feng Wu snored under the blanket. With her head covered, the girl was sound asleep. Her cheeks were flushed and bubbles were coming out of her mouth. She was sleeping as soundly as a baby. Jun Linyuan let out a breath of relief and mumbled in resignation, "What a baby." Qin Shi and Tubros chatted after they slept with each other. "Young Master Qin, I'm still very curious. Who is that young master?" Tubros lay in bed and held Qin Shi's arm. "You seem to respect him a lot, but Lord Zhao won the competition. I'm so confused." Qin Shi was amused. "Do you think that teenager was defeated by Zhao Yi?" Tubros said, "That's right. Miss Lotus is our most popular girl, and everyone wants to get close to her. If anyone has a chance, they'll want to compete over her. Otherwise, they'll have to sleep alone tonight." Qin Shi almost burst out laughing. "Sleep alone? You're making me laugh." Tubros patted Qin Yi's chest shyly. "You're such a naughty boy. Just tell me." Qin Shi said, Miss Lotus won't be able to sleep with that teenager because she's a girl. She stared at Qin-Chi in disbelief. You're lying. Qin-Chi said, I'm not. You'll see tomorrow. Tubros said, That girl was making fun of us, wasn't she? Was she looking down on us? She's a woman. Why didn't attend such an event? Why did she flirt with us? Tubros was a little vexed and didn't choose her words carefully. Qin-Chi glanced at her. Don't say those words once you leave this room. If you offend that girl, no one will be able to save you. Now get lost. Young Master Qin, panic-stricken, Tubros wrapped her arms around Qin. However, Qin-Chi didn't want the woman to offend Feng Sun, so he told her to get lost. Tubros was kicked out before she was fully dressed. However, someone grabbed her and dragged her into another cabin. The sun shone brightly the next morning. Feng Wu had changed back to her female outfit and was taking a walk on the deck with Jun Linyuan. Thanks to Jun Linyuan's spiritual saint liquid every day, Feng Wu was getting better. Although she was still weak, she could walk a few steps now. A woman had been staring at Feng Wu from behind the door with a grim look in her eyes. Chapter 3658 Chapter 3658 Who do you choose for? Chapter 3658 Who do you choose for? She stared at Feng Wu with eyes filled with hatred. Feng Wu was walking when she sensed someone staring at her. She looked up in that direction involuntarily. The door was tightly shut, and there was nothing out of the ordinary. Feng Wu looked at Jun Linyuan in bewilderment. Is someone looking at me? Jun Linyuan nodded. Yes. Feng Wu asked, Who's that? Jun Linyuan glanced at Feng Wu but didn't say anything. As smart as Feng Wu was, she suddenly realized something and chuckled. It couldn't have been one of those women from last night, could it? Jun Linyuan helped Feng Wu sit down and put some food on the table. Feng Sun couldn't believe his eyes. Boss Jun was such a respected figure that even Emperor Wu couldn't let him do anything. But now Jun Linyuan was taking care of Feng Wu and had done a great job. Feng Sun asked Feng Wu as he stuffed some buns into his mouth, Did you sleep well last night? Feng Wu shrugged. I was exhausted yesterday and went to bed right away. I slept for 12 hours. It's such a wonderful day to come out and enjoy the sun. She sipped her tea as she spoke. Feng Sun smiled mysteriously and whispered to Feng Wu, When the ship stopped at the harbor this morning to replenish its supplies, I actually saw Zhao Yi's servant leave the ship in a hurry and come back when the ship was about to set out. I sent someone to ask around and found out Zhao Yi had sent a letter to the Dugu family. Feng Wu said, Did he ask Duguling for help? I didn't hit him or anything. Feng Sun said, Of course it's not that simple. Take a look at this letter. Feng Sun had even gotten that letter? Zhao Yi didn't have a chance at all. Feng Wu asked, Is it a bad idea to read other people's letters? Feng Sun said, You wouldn't have asked that if you knew what the letter said about you. Feng Wu glanced at him, then read the letter. How interesting. There was a portrait of Feng Wu in the letter. Although it couldn't depict a fraction of Feng Wu's charm, one could still recognize her features. Everyone in the Dugu family had met her before, and they could tell it was her right away. Zhao Yi was asking Duguling if the person was Feng Sun. If that was the case, he could use the opportunity to frame Feng Sun. As for how to do it, Zhao Yi even wrote down the plan in the letter, saying that it was a preliminary plan and that he needed his godfather's advice. That plan. Feng Wu frowned as soon as she saw it. It was malicious. She gripped the letter. If the target hadn't been her but an ordinary person, they would be doomed by this letter. Life away from the court was just as dangerous. Feng Wu looked up at Feng Sun and apologized. I'm sorry, but I only mentioned the northern Feng mansion on a whim. Because Feng Wu was the goddaughter of the northern Feng mansion, she had no problem mentioning her identity. However, She didn't deny it when the other party suspected that she was Feng Sun. She didn't deny it because she tried to mislead Zhao Yi, but, Feng Sun said grumpily, "What's there to apologize for? I'm only showing you this letter because I want to ask you if we should kill Zhao Yi now or keep him for later. If we can do it now, I'll cut his head off." Feng Sun was furious. Someone had set him up like this, not to mention that it was a petty fourth-ranked official. Chapter 3659 Chapter 3659 Have an Egg 1. Chapter 3659 Have an Egg 1. Feng Wu rubbed her chin. Should she kill him now or later? There's another sentence here that mentions the former governor of Yong City. Feng Wu pointed at the last sentence. His death might actually have something to do with Zhao Yi. Feng Sun stood up angrily. "I'm going to." Feng Wu shook her head. "Calm down. We still have a few days before we reach Yong City. Let's do some investigation in the next few days. We don't want to alarm them." Feng Sun nodded and fought back his anger. Feng Wu chuckled. "Just think about it. Not only hasn't he given out his letter, but you've also gotten hold of it. You now know all his plans. Won't it be fun to watch him pretend to be innocent?" Jun Linyuan removed the top two-thirds of the eggshell, scooped up a spoonful of yolk, and fed it to Feng Wu. Feng Wu ate it off his hand. She liked the soft and buttery texture of the half-cooked egg. No one else could make it, but Jun Linyuan could keep the temperature under control and cook the raw eggs with his hand. Feng Wu was so surprised and happy when Jun Linyuan made the egg for her for the first time that he had gotten used to doing it every day after that. But Feng Sun wasn't used to it. This was the first time he had ever seen it. He stared at Boss Jun in bewilderment. Why did it feel like Boss Jun was raising a daughter? Feng Wu only spoke to Feng Sun after finishing the egg. "Go on." Feng Sun said, "Right? Where was I?" Was Boss Jun still the same Jun Linyuan who had put a destructive sword on Emperor Wu's neck? Feng Sun was really curious. Would everyone become like this when they fell in love with a girl? Feng Wu said, "Eat an egg to nourish your brain." Feng Sun cleared his throat. "Ahem, I meant." Just then, two people slowly walked down the stairs. It was Zhao Yi, and next to him was Miss Lotus. Miss Lotus gave Feng Sun and the others an apologetic look, but she was amazed when she saw Feng Wu. What a beautiful girl! Her eyebrows were like distant mountains, her eyes were as limpid as autumn water, her skin was as smooth as jade, and she looked as pretty as a picture. She was so unique. Miss Lotus was already a top courtesan and had great looks, but she was nothing compared to Feng Wu. Zhao Yi couldn't believe it. He let go of Miss Lotus and stared at Feng Wu. Feng Sun was worried that Jun Linyuan would slap him to death, which would hinder their investigation. Hence, he reminded him, "Master Zhao, what are you looking at?" Zhao Yi cleared his throat. "May I ask for your name?" He cut to the chase. Feng Wu suddenly smiled. "Didn't you ask me that question last night? Why are you asking me again? That's just annoying." "Last night? How was that possible? Last night? It's you." Miss Lotus came back to herself and stared at Feng Wu. "That noble young master from last night was you." Feng Wu nodded. Miss Lotus was speechless. Zhao Yi was astonished. So, this woman was the one who had been competing with him the night before. That teenager was a woman, and he had just tried to. Zhao Yi didn't know what to say. He couldn't sit still anymore and went back to his cabin. Miss Lotus gave her an apologetic look and followed Zhao Yi's. Chapter 3660 Chapter 3660 Have an Egg 2. Chapter 3660 Have an Egg 2. Feng Wu had a good impression of Miss Lotus, so she reminded her, "Zhao Yi isn't a nice person. Be careful." Miss Lotus stopped, turned around and gave Feng Wu a wry smile. It's not up to me. Feng Wu asked, "What's going on?" Miss Lotus looked up at the cabin on the second floor, where the door was tightly shut. After some thought, she sat down in front of Feng Wu and couldn't hold back her sorrow anymore. "He tricked me." Miss Lotus buried her face in her hands and burst into tears. Feng Wu and Feng Sun exchanged looks. "Was it that serious? What happened? What did he do to you?" Feng Wu was curious. Had Zhao Yi put some undead insect or poison in Miss Lotus? Miss Lotus smiled bitterly. "Last night." Hearing that, Feng Wu looked at Jun Linyuan, who wasn't interested at all. He was only interested in looking after Feng Wu. Feng Wu looked at Feng Sun again, and they both saw astonishment in each other's eyes. "What? Is that even possible?" Qin Shi was astonished when he walked over and heard what Miss Lotus said. "I've never heard such a thing before." As it turned out, last night Zhao Yi took Miss Lotus back to his room. After they slept together, Zhao Yi had a pot of soup brought to him. He drank half of it before putting it back on the table. After getting on board, Miss Lotus was parched from all the dancing and fiddling, and there was no teapot on the table. Seeing that Zhao Yi had fallen asleep, she thought that he wouldn't drink the soup anymore, so she drank it. She had been complaining inwardly about how stingy Zhao Yi was. He had only brought a little pot of soup, and what was that soup? After drinking it, she felt refreshed as if she had been washed clean. Zhao Yi woke up when Miss Lotus was still in a trance-like state. Seeing this, he panicked and snatched the bowl out of her hand. One look and Zhao Yi was furious. "How could this happen? How could you drink it? You bitch!" He was furious. Frightened, Miss Lotus dropped to her knees without getting dressed. Zhao Yi was furious. "That's the medicine for my breakthrough. I'm about to make a breakthrough, and I've just taken a sip. I was going to take a second sip, but you drank it." Knowing that things were getting out of hand, Miss Lotus panicked and kept crying for mercy. She went pale and cried, "I'll pay for it." However, Zhao Yi only grew angrier as he spoke. He kept telling her what precious herbs and potions were in the soup and that they couldn't be bought on the market. The Dugu family had prepared them for him. In the end, he gave her a price which frightened Miss Lotus. 1,000 spiritual stones. My soup is worth 1,000 spiritual stones. Zhao Yi pointed at Miss Lotus's head and said angrily, "You wouldn't be worth that much even if you're sold 100 times. Miss Lotus had served cultivators before and knew a thing or two about cultivation. She couldn't help but retort, "How could it be that expensive, you?" Chapter 3661 Chapter 3661 A Trap 1-0 Chapter 3661 A Trap 1-0 Zhao Yi said, "You've stopped me from making a breakthrough, and you're still trying to retort? Fine. Give me back my medicine. Not your vomit." Miss Lotus was speechless. After much persuasion, Zhao Yi finally nodded and agreed to let Miss Lotus sell herself to him. Poor Miss Lotus. She had already freed herself from her previous brothel and had accumulated quite a lot of wealth over the years. However, not only had she lost all her savings, but she had also been forced to sign a contract to sell herself to Zhao Yi. Feng Wu found it preposterous. What medicine was that? 1,000 spiritual stones? Feng Sun couldn't figure it out either. That Zhao Yi set you up. Big time. Feng Wu looked at Miss Lotus. "And you sold yourself like that?" Miss Lotus nodded, still crying. "If I didn't sign the contract, Master Zhao said he would report it to the officials. He's a government official, and the other officials will always protect him. He'll win no matter what." "So?" Feng Wu rubbed her forehead in resignation. "You really are." Just then, someone walked out. Feng Wu looked up and saw that it was indeed her archenemy. Zhao Yi stood there and stared at Feng Wu. Of course, Feng Wu wasn't scared. She glared back at him. Zhao Yi smirked and turned to Miss Lotus. "Get over here." Despite her frustration, Miss Lotus had no choice but to slowly walk up to Zhao Yi. Seeing her red eyes, Zhao Yi knew that she had been crying. When he saw how angry Feng Wu and the others were, he realized what had happened. You complained to them, bitch. Zhao Yi kicked Miss Lotus. The kick was so hard that it sent Miss Lotus flying backward. They were on the deck. Such a force could send someone overboard, and that was what happened. Feng Sun rose to his feet when Miss Lotus flew backward and dragged her back. Otherwise, she would have flown off the deck and fallen into the surging river. Feng Wu was really angry now. She stared at Zhao Yi with cold eyes. Zhao Yi smirked and stared at Miss Lotus. Get your ass over here! Seeing the look on Zhao Yi's face, Miss Lotus was terrified. Holding her waist, she timidly walked toward him. Feng Wu said to her, If you don't go, no one can force you. Miss Lotus stopped and turned to look at Feng Wu. Feng Wu looked at her with a reassuring look in her eyes, which gave Miss Lotus a very safe feeling. But Miss Lotus smiled bitterly. This beautiful girl was only trying to help her out of kindness. However, Zhao Yi was backed by the Dugu family, and she couldn't afford to offend him. Miss Lotus smiled bitterly and shook her head at Feng Wu. In the end, she went up to Zhao Yi. Feng Wu shook her head and said to Feng Sun, I don't like him. She pointed at Zhao Yi. Many people were shocked. What was that supposed to mean? Did this pretty girl just say that she didn't like Master Zhao? Feng Sun nodded as he rolled up his sleeves. What a coincidence. I don't like him either. As he spoke, he stretched and cracked his knuckles. Zhao Yi panicked for no reason. What are you doing? He glared at Feng Sun. Feng Sun smiled. I'm going to hit you. Feng Sun raised his fist before he said another word. With a thump, Zhao Yi flew backward. Chapter 3662, Chapter 3662, A Trap 2. Chapter 3662, A Trap 2. Everyone stared at Feng Sun in astonishment. He had made a move. Miss Lotus blanched. He's the mayor of Yong City. Then, they saw Feng Sun raise his hand and drag Zhao Yi back. He could move objects across the air. Luckily, the teenager didn't throw Mayor Zhao overboard. That was proof enough of his apprehension. At that thought, Miss Lotus let out a breath of relief. However, before she could relax, she saw that Feng Sun had clenched his other hand into a fist. He then punched Zhao Yi in the stomach. How dare you pick on Xiao Wu when she's too weak to do anything to you? She's not someone you can pick on. I'm making it clear. How dare you snort in front of Xiao Wu? You clown. Zhao Yi was furious. Before he knew it, he had been punched a few times in the stomach. The punches were so hard that he thought his ribs were going to break. Zhao Yi's guards and entourage ran toward him. But Feng Sun was too fierce. These people were nothing in front of him. Young Lord Feng was a spiritual overlord now, and he could do whatever he wanted on this continent. Thump, thump, thump. Feng Sun kicked the 4 guards into the river before they could get close enough. Zhao Yi's heart sank. He shouted, Stop! Stop! But Feng Sun wouldn't stop until he had had enough. Zhao Yi looked enviously at his servants and wished he had been kicked into the river. Feng Sun smirked. I haven't had enough yet. Do you think I'll let you go? Master Zhao was a cultivator himself, but he was no more than an ant in front of a Sneeritnal overlord. Seeing that the fight was over, Feng Sun tossed Master Zhao aside and smirked. I'm only going to teach you a little lesson. If you dare to glare at Xiao Wu again, you'll see. Zhao Yi used to be the most prestigious man on this ship, but he was in so much pain that he couldn't even make a sound. His servants climbed back onto the ship and gingerly walked up to Zhao Yi. When Feng Sun turned to look at Feng Wu, 2 of the guards picked Zhao Yi up and jumped into the river together. Hey you! When Feng Sun looked over his shoulder, he saw that they had jumped into the water. Feng Sun didn't know what to say. Why did they run away so soon? I've vented my anger, and I won't hit him again. Feng Wu already didn't like Zhao Yi when he forced Miss Lotus to sign the contract. Now that he had kicked Miss Lotus for no reason, she didn't like him at all. Therefore, Feng Wu had no problem when Feng Sun beat him up. Seeing that he had run off, Feng Wu frowned a little. Feng Sun studied Feng Wu's face. How about I go get them back? The river was nothing to a spiritual overlord. Feng Wu gave it some thought and smiled. Don't worry. He'll come back. Seeing how hard Zhao Yi was trying to swim away, Feng Sun was suspicious. Will he? Feng Wu smiled. Yes. Meanwhile, Miss Lotus finally burst into tears. Feng Wu said in resignation, We've chased him away. Why are you still crying? Miss Lotus cried even harder. Miss, I'm worried about you. Oh. Chapter 36-63 Chapter 36-63 Forever Flower House. Chapter 36-63 Forever Flower House. Feng Wu looked at her in bewilderment. Why are you worried about me? Miss Lotus said in tears. He told me that he was going to Yong City to take up his post. He's the future mayor, and he has connections with the Dugu family, where Empress Dugu is from. Miss, if you help me like this, you'll get yourself in trouble as well. What should we do? Zhao Yi and Miss Lotus weren't the only passengers. There were many others on board. Although the others enjoyed watching Feng Sun beat up Zhao Yi, they were still worried about the consequences he would face. Uncle Zhao said to Feng Wu and the others, We're almost at the wharf of Yi City. You should take this opportunity to get off the ship and hide from the limelight. Aunt Wang nodded. That's right. Master Zhao doesn't look like a good person at all. He's gone for now, but he'll definitely come back with more people. He won't let you off the hook. So, please leave. Feng Wu only smiled. Feng Sun smiled as well. If he wants to come, let him. We're not afraid of him. The others didn't know what to say. They felt Feng Wu and her friends were so arrogant that they were bound to lose out. Seeing that Miss Lotus still wanted to say something, Two Bros tugged at her sleeve. Don't say another word, or you'll get yourself into trouble later. She asked. Miss Lotus, are you getting off at E City? Miss Lotus said, I don't know. Lowering her voice, Two Bros threw a dirty look at Miss Lotus. You started this. Do you think Master Zhao will let you off the hook? You're so dead. Seeing that Miss Lotus was silent, Two Bros added, Run as fast as you can. Your life is more important than anything else. She then walked past Miss Lotus and went back to her own room. A cold voice rang out next to her. Done. Two Bros was a little scared, but she soon nodded. I've told her everything as you instructed. As for if she'll run away, the eerie voice smirked. Does it really matter? Two Bros looked at the mysterious masked man in bewilderment. When she was kicked out by Qin Chi, the masked man dragged her away, and she became part of a scheme. However, an official boat arrived before they reached the harbor of E City. Shit! The first mate had been watching anxiously from the deck, and soon, he saw a government boat sailing in their direction at an unbelievable speed. The look on his face changed a little, and he turned to Feng Sun. The boat supervisor is here. Feng Sun was confused. Boat supervisor? What's that? The first mate didn't seem pleased. Before he could say anything, Uncle Zhao beat him to it. They're in charge of supervising the ships sailing in this river. The highest-ranking official is Li Chaoding, the eldest son of Duke Li. The first mate looked at Uncle Zhao in bewilderment. You know a lot. Uncle Zhao stroked his beard and chuckled. Next to him, Madame Wang said grumpily, He's not some ignorant old man. If I remember it correctly, you're from the Shadowless sect, aren't you? Uncle Zhao smiled and didn't retort. The Shadowless sect? Feng Wu remembered that Elder Dongfang and Dongfang Xiun were from that sect, which was one of the 4 major sections. You're not an ordinary middle-aged woman either. You're in charge of running the Flower Forever house in the capital. Oh. Chapter 36-64 Chapter 36-64 How could it be them? Chapter 36-64 How could it be them? Feng Wu glanced at them curiously. She had heard of Flower Forever before. It was the second largest brothel in the imperial capital. She didn't expect to see so many capable people on board. Well, we still haven't figured out who you are. Madame Wang looked from Feng Wu to Feng Sun and Jun Linyuan. You're too outstanding to be an ordinary man. I've met quite a few young lords, but I've never met anyone like the 3 of you. The first mate said anxiously, the inspection boat is coming soon. Normally, we won't meet them before we pass E-City and on our way to Luan City. I'm afraid Master Zhao has reported to them. The first mate still had no idea that Feng Sun was young Lord Feng. Dragging Feng Sun aside, he asked in an anxious voice, "Do you have something to tell?" Feng Sun was confused. "Tell you what?" The first mate said anxiously, "If you're caught and locked up, no one will be able to save you. If you want to live, tell me your plan." Feng Sun rubbed his nose. The first mate sighed. "You have a point. Master Li Chaodeng is coming, and Master Zhao has connections with the Dugu family. The Li family and the Dugu family are longtime friends. You've really run into some trouble this time. I just hope that the soaring wings won't be dragged into this," the first mate murmured. Feng Sun gave him a strange look. The first mate gave Feng Sun a pleading look. "Young Master Feng, you're not going to make our ship in trouble, are you?" Feng Sun gave him another strange look. "Young Master Feng?" The first mate was confused. Had he addressed the young man incorrectly? Just then, Feng Sun tossed him a token. The first mate was confused. Why did young Master Feng give him that token? Was he some kind of master in the imperial capital? However, one look at the token and his legs gave out. Because it was Feng. Feng, the first mate couldn't utter a word. Just then, a hand landed on his shoulder. Qin Chi gloated. "Didn't I tell you? He's your master. What did you say before? You said if he was your master, you would eat this ship. Come, eat it for me." The first mate was almost in tears. Covering Qin Chi's mouth with his hand, he turned to Feng Sun with an ingratiating look on his face. "My lord." As he spoke, he was about to kneel down. Feng Sun waved him off. "Don't bother." After that, he took back the token and went back to Feng Wu. The first mate was amazed when he saw how obedient his young lord was when he walked up to that girl. Feng Sun was already the young lord of the northern Feng mansion, but he looked so docile when he stood next to the girl. Wasn't young Lord Feng supposed to be unruly and short-tempered? Who was this girl? And who was the even more outstanding teenager? If one didn't know who Feng Sun was, it would be very hard to guess who Feng Wu and Jun Linyuan were. But now that Feng Sun was here, don't tell me that the first mate stared at Qin Chi in excitement. Qin Chi looked pleased. "Bingo! OMG! Oh my lord! How can it be them? How?" Chapter 36-65 Chapter 36-65 Slander His Royal Highness 1. Chapter 36-65 Slander His Royal Highness 1. How can it be them? How? The first mate stared at Qin Chi in disbelief. Qin Chi smiled. "Hasn't it happened already?" The first mate took a deep breath. "That's..." Most of the people in this empire had never met Jun Linyuan or Feng Wu before, but most of them had heard of their names. The others didn't notice the conversation between Qin Chi and the first mate. By then, Li Chaodeng had boarded the ship. He wasn't alone. Behind him was a group of strong cultivators. The guards were all spiritual lords because they needed to supervise all the ships sailing in this river. However, they were still an entire stage below Feng Sun, who was a spiritual overlord. Dressed in his official uniform, Li Chaodeng crossed his hands behind his back and was escorted onto the ship. By then, the soaring wing had stopped at the center of the river, and Captain Wu led a team of people toward them. Temporary inspection. The subordinate next to Li Chaodeng, who had a broad saber at his waist, said loudly with a cold look in his eyes. After that, they were ready to charge out. Captain Wu frowned and said, "Wait." The man in the lead turned to look at Li Chaopan. The only ones that hadn't moved were Li Chaopan and the person next to him. It was none other than Zhao Yi himself. Captain Wu frowned. "Master Li, may I ask what crime we've committed to warrant such an inspection?" Li Chaodeng slowly put his hands in front of him and hid them in his sleeves. "What crime?" He turned to Zhao Wei. "Tell him." Zhao Yi glanced at Captain Wu. "Old Wu, if you don't intervene now, you'll have nothing to do with this. If you do, everyone on this ship will be arrested." Captain Wu was furious. "Master Zhao, you..." Zhao Yi waved his hand. "I'm done talking. Hand over the criminals." "What criminals?" Captain Wu frowned. "Them." Zhao Yi pointed at Feng Sun, Feng Wu, and Jun Linyuan. Zhao Yi turned to Li Chaodeng. "It's them. They're trying to start a rebellion." "Rebellion?" Feng Wu was speechless. "What rebellion?" Zhao Yi ignored Feng Wu and turned to Li Chaodeng. They were criticizing His Royal Highness, saying that he. Feng Wu and Feng Sun exchanged looks. Things were getting interesting. Feng Wu had thought that Zhao Yi had brought Li Chaodeng here to accuse Feng Sun of beating him up, which was why he wanted to arrest them. As it turned out, he was slandering them. However, that accusation... Feng Wu only wanted to know how Zhao Yi would react when he found out that Jun Linyuan was one of the accused. Feng Sun was standing in the shadows, so Li Chaodeng couldn't see his face. Feng Sun was going to come out, but he stopped when he heard Zhao Yi's ridiculous excuse. Right now, Feng Sun was leaning against a pillar with his arms crossed and a smile on his face. He wanted to see what other ridiculous things Zhao Yi could come up with. Just then, Jun Linyuan heard the noise and was walking down the stairs. The teenager was an extraordinary sight. He slowly walked down the stairs and looked straight ahead. Zhao Yi panicked a little when he saw Jun Linyuan, but he still summoned up his courage. Chapter 3666 Chapter 3666 Slander His Royal Highness 4. Chapter 3666 Slander His Royal Highness 4. Zhao Yi panicked a little when he saw Jun Linyuan, but he still summoned up his courage. It was him. Pointing at Jun Linyuan, Zhao Yi turned to Li Chaodeng. "Master Li, it was him." He was saying wild things about His Royal Highness Jun Linyuan, saying that the Crown Prince of the Empire was... Zhao Yi tried his best to make things up in his head. Meanwhile, Li Chaodeng was so baffled that his knees buckled. He recognized Jun Linyuan. Having lived in a remote corner for so long, Zhao Yi didn't know who Jun Linyuan was. However, Li Chaodeng was the son of Duke Li, so of course, he knew what Jun Linyuan looked like. Meanwhile, Zhao Yi was still making up stories. He knew that if he told the others that he had been beaten up, those people might not be arrested for long, but if it involved insulting His Royal Highness, it would be very serious. Hence, Zhao Yi said loudly. He insulted His Royal Highness and said that he wasn't good enough to be the Crown Prince. He also said other bad things. Everyone stared at Zhao Yi in astonishment. He was lying through his teeth. No one on the ship had ever mentioned His Royal Highness, let alone saying bad things about him. But no one here was stupid. They knew that Zhao Yi had brought it up on purpose so that he could kill those people with that excuse. Meanwhile, the look on the first mate's face was very interesting. He gave Zhao Yi a sympathetic look. Young Lord Feng was here in person, and that exceptional teenager was the Crown Prince himself. Seeing that Captain Wu was about to say something, the first mate rushed over, grabbed him, and whispered something in his ear. When Captain Wu looked up again, he stared at Jun Linyuan in astonishment. Jun Linyuan walked up to Feng Wu and stopped by her side. Li Keiding's legs gave out, and he almost dropped to his knees. "What else did we say?" Feng Sun walked out of the shadows with a grin. Li Qiaoding knew Feng Sun as well. He was ghastly pale when he recognized Feng Sun. "Brother Feng," Li Qiaoding's knees buckled, and he grabbed Feng Sun's arm to stop him from adding fuel to the fire. "Brother Feng? Did you just call me that?" Feng Sun patted Li Qiaoding on the shoulder and smiled at him. Li Qiaoding immediately corrected himself. "Boss Feng. You're Boss Feng." The others gave him strange looks. Surly was one of the most influential men on the river, and no passing boat would dare to offend him, not to mention that he was backed by someone as intimidating as the Li family. But now, Zhao Yi was equally dumbfounded and gave Li Qiaoding a questioning look. "Master Li." Li Qiaoding was going to kneel down at Jun Linyuan's feet, but judging by the look on Jun Linyuan's face, if he dared to do that, the guy would probably kick him into the river. After all, the Crown Prince wouldn't have come here if it wasn't for a private visit. A private visit? That idea made Li Qiaoding break into a cold sweat again. Without hesitation, he slapped Zhao Yi in the face. The slap was so hard that Zhao Yi rolled around on the deck. "What are you talking about?" Li Qiaoding waved at his men. "Take him away." Zhao Yi was baffled. He didn't expect this turn of events and couldn't react in time. Chapter 3667 Chapter 3667 The Supreme Crown Prince 1. Chapter 3667 The Supreme Crown Prince 1. Li Qiaoding's subordinates were also dumbfounded. According to Zhao Yi, the people on the ship were obviously rich. If they were arrested, they would pay a small fortune for their freedom. But in the end, they still listened to Li Qiaoding. Therefore, Deputy Wang walked toward Lord Zhao skeptically. Zhao Yi panicked. Why are you arresting me? He's the one you should be arresting." He pointed at Jun Linyuan as he spoke. Li Qiaoding was so frightened that his legs went weak. He kicked Zhao Yi and told his men, "Hurry up and take him away." "Hold on." Just as Zhao Yi was about to be taken away, Feng Sun chuckled and stopped them. Everyone looked at him suspiciously. What was this young man doing? The matter was about to calm down, and he still wanted to complicate the situation. Uncle Zhao winked at him. "Young man, that's enough." Madame Wang also tugged at his sleeve. "Don't cause any more trouble." Everyone else on the ship agreed. Feng Sun gave Li Qiaoding a half-smile. "Do you think I'm causing trouble?" Li Qiaoding glanced at Jun Linyuan and put his hands in a hurry. "No, of course not." He smiled. "If that's the case, why don't you sit down?" Li Qiaoding was pinned to the chair and couldn't move. Most importantly, he was frightened. Feng Sun gave him an indifferent look. The accusation of slandering the Crown Prince. Of course, Zhao Yi didn't like how things were going, but judging by Li Qiaoding's reaction, it seemed that the other party had a more powerful background, so Zhao Yi felt a little uneasy. Li Qiaoding said, "Of course not. Others might dare to slander the Crown Prince, but you're Feng Sun, his childhood friend. How can you slander him? Master Zhao was making things up." "Feng Nun." Zhao Yi frowned. Why did this name sound so familiar? Feng Wu? Young Lord Feng. Madame Wang recognized that name first. Zhao Yi's heart skipped a beat, and his expression turned extremely ugly. It was young Lord Feng from the Northern Feng mansion. No wonder he was so domineering previously. Compared to General Northern Feng, Zhao Yi felt that the Dugu family was slightly inferior, so he felt even more uneasy. "How do you think we should deal with this Master Zhao who slandered us?" Feng Sun grinned at Li Qiaoding. Li Qiaoding immediately slammed the table. How should we deal with him? Of course, we'll. He had wanted to say they should lock Zhao Yi up, but the look in Jun Linyuan's eyes told him that wasn't enough. Why don't we? Why don't you ask our girl here? Feng Sun smiled at Feng Wu. Xiao Wu, what do you think we should do with him? Xiao Wu? Li Chaoding's heart sank when he heard the name. He stared at Feng Wu with his dark eyes. How could he not know about the conflict between Duke Li's family and the Feng clan? In the beginning, they were still in-laws. Later on, Li Chaopan divorced the eldest daughter of the Feng clan. This lawsuit actually reached the imperial court, and His Majesty personally tried it. In the end, the Li family was the one who suffered. As the heir of Duke Li, Li Chaoding naturally remembered this enmity. But now, he stared at her. You're Feng Wu. If he hadn't been busy with work that day, he would have rushed back to the capital. Instead, he found out about all of this from his brother's letter. Feng Wu looked at him and smiled. I guess enemies are bound to meet. Li Xiaodong wasn't an official for nothing. When he saw the crown prince. Chapter 3668 Chapter 3668 The Supreme Crown Prince 2 Chapter 3668 The Supreme Crown Prince 2 Li Chaodong wasn't an official for nothing. When he saw the Crown Prince standing next to Feng Wu, he was discouraged. With Jun Linyuan's protection, Feng Wu would be able to do anything she wanted. Feng Wu gave Li Chaodong a casual look. What? Do you want to avenge your brother? To be honest, I didn't have time to do anything for him because I was busy with something else. By the time I realized what was going on, I was already on this ship. She sat down opposite Li Chaodong and looked at him expectantly. So, are you really going to avenge your brother now? Li Xiaodong's face darkened. No matter how much he wanted to avenge his brother, he wouldn't dare to because Jun Linyuan's eyes were as cold as ice. His subordinate, Deputy Wang, had ready to rush forward when he heard Feng Wu's name. However, when he heard Li Chaodong's words, he was puzzled. Li Chaodong had been cursing Feng Wu behind her back, but now, my lord, didn't you say that once we see Feng Wu? However, before Deputy Wang could finish, Li Chaodong gave him a dirty look. Deputy Wang was speechless. Li Chaodong turned to look at Feng Wu with a smile. Haha, Miss Feng Wu, I've heard so much about you but never had the chance to meet you. Finally, Li Chaodong was extremely enthusiastic, as if meeting Feng Wu was his greatest honor. Feng Wu was amazed. If his brother had such a flexible attitude, he would not have gone through such humiliation from her. Feng Wu looked at Li Chaopan indifferently. Does that mean you really want to see me? Li Chaodong said, I've been looking forward to meeting you. I see that Miss Feng Wu is really beautiful. Li Chaodong gave her a thumbs up as he spoke. Feng Wu grinned. Li Chaodong didn't feel embarrassed at all, and became even more enthusiastic. Feng Sun was speechless. The onlookers were even more so. The turn of events was too unexpected. She smiled. Oh? Then why are you here on this ship? Why? Of course, we're here to arrest you and take you back to split the ransom, Deputy Wang thought to himself, but if he dared to say this now, he knew Li Chaodong would slap him. Li Chaodong was all smiles. It's just a routine inspection. Feng Wu said indifferently, Are you done? She had made it very clear, and Li Chaodong could tell. He rose to his feet in a hurry. He cupped his fists at the Crown Prince first, then said goodbye to Feng Wu. We're done. You can go now. Of course, Li Chaodong wanted to get close to the future emperor, but Jun Linyuan's gaze was as cold as ice. He could only leave with a bitter smile. Li Chaodong soon disappeared from everyone's sight. After he left, the people on the Shin didn't discuss what had just happened. The backgrounds of these three teenagers seemed to be a little beyond their reach. She rubbed her forehead with a wry smile. As a matter of fact, almost everyone's identity had been exposed, especially Jun Linyuan. There was only one outstanding young man like him in the world, and he was too easy to guess. Chapter 3669 Chapter 3669 The Supreme Crown Prince 3. Chapter 3669 The Supreme Crown Prince 3. Dee don't tell me. They can't be. That was. Everyone looked at each other and whispered, but they didn't dare to ask. She rubbed her forehead. That was why she didn't like to reveal her identity. If she did, it wouldn't be fun anymore. She was already thinking of moving to another ship. Just then, someone asked gingerly, Miss Feng Wu? You're Miss Feng Wei? She turned around and saw that it was Miss Lotus. She had been tricked into signing a contract with Zhao Yi to sell herself to him. Right now, she was standing in front of Feng Wu with a look of disbelief on her face, and her eyes wide open. She threw up her hands. Take a wild guess. At this moment, someone rushed over and bumped into Miss Lotus, knocking her to the side. Two bros glared at Miss Lotus, finding the latter utterly stupid. Miss Lotus was puzzled. Why did Two Bros do that? Two Bros was already kneeling on the floor. Miss, you're the young lady of a rich family. How can you not have a maid with you? I might be from a brothel, but I'm an excellent servant. Miss, let me stay by your side and serve you. Feng Wu looked down at Two Bros. She was a smart woman, but she was too smart. She knew why Two Bros didn't let Miss Lotus ask about her identity, because once she said who she was, Two Bros wouldn't even be qualified to be her maid. She glanced at Two Bros and said nothing. Two Bros said anxiously, Miss, I was sold to a brothel when I was little and has lived a miserable life. I'm thinking about hanging myself all the time. Finally, I met such a kind young lady like you. Please help me. I can do everything. I can wash, cook, play musical instruments, paint. I don't want to sell myself for money either. I only hope that you can take me in. As she spoke, Two Bros prostrated on the ground and kowtowed for a long time. Feng Sun didn't know if Feng Wu was touched by her sincerity, but many onlookers were. They pitied her when they saw her cry. Two Bros, you, Miss Lotus looked at Two Bros in confusion. Why did she say she lived a miserable life and wanted to hang herself? She was the madam's favorite and was treated like a treasure. She lived more comfortably than noble young ladies. What was she talking about? Miss Lotus wasn't that smart. Otherwise, she wouldn't have been tricked by Zhao Yi and signed a slave contract. Her target wasn't Miss Feng Wu, but Miss Lotus was shocked. She never dreamed that Two Bros would have aimed so high. Miss Feng Wu, actually, we're doing fine, Miss Lotus reminded Feng Wu. She felt Feng Wu looked weak, sickly, and not very energetic. If the kind young lady fell for Two Bros' plan, her future would be ruined. At that thought, Miss Lotus shifted her gaze from Feng Wu to Jun Linyuan. The Crown Prince indeed had the ability to make women go crazy for him. However, Feng Wu had helped Miss Lotus, so the latter didn't want Feng Wu's future husband to be seduced by another woman. As a member of a brothel, Miss Lotus knew what could happen. Chapter 3670 Chapter 3670 The Supreme Crown Prince 4. Chapter 3670 The Supreme Crown Prince 4. She knew very well how powerful the charm techniques of the women in the brothel were. Hence, Miss Lotus secretly reminded Feng Wu not to fall for Two Bros' trick and take her in as a maid. Two Bros understood what Miss Lotus was getting at. She raised her head and glared fiercely at the latter. She had no intention of taking in a maid. Even if she did, she wouldn't take in someone from a brothel, let alone a person as scheming as Two Bros. A man could easily be seduced with such a woman around. She glanced at Two Bros and said with a frown, I have no intention of taking in a maid. Get up. However, the greatest opportunity in her life was right in front of her. How could Two Bros give it up? She banged her forehead on the floor. Feng Wu didn't know what else to do. Jun Linyuan wanted to take Feng Wu back upstairs, but Feng Wu hadn't settled the matter yet, so she didn't want to leave just yet. Knowing that Feng Wu was in poor health, Feng Sun was worried that she would get upset, so he tried to push her away. Go to your room. I'll take care of this. Feng Wu hesitated. Are you sure? Feng Sun said proudly, Of course. Feng Wu rolled her eyes at him. Fine. You take care of it. She didn't even look at Two Bros and followed Jun Linyuan upstairs. Feng Wu really wasn't feeling well. After the incident with Li Chaodeng, she went back to her room and fell asleep. By the time she woke up, it was already night. She really thought that Feng Sun would take care of the situation, but, at dinner time, she saw Two Bros serving at the table. Feng Wu was confused. Feng Wu, Feng Sun, and Jun Linyuan ate together, which was why Two Bros was here. Feng Wu looked at Feng Sun in confusion. Feng Sun shook his head. Leave us. He gestured at Two Bros, dismissing her. Two Bros lowered her head and obediently left the room. She never looked up, behaving as obedient as she could be. The table was full of dishes, but Feng Wu had no appetite. She looked at Feng Sun. Did you take her in? Feng Sun said in a hurry, just as a maid, not a concubine. Why are you looking at me like that? Feng Wu wanted to slap him. Feng Nun, what are you thinking? Feng Sun dodged right away. Hey, don't hit me. Let me explain. Feng Wu glared at him. I'm giving you one chance. Feng Sun sat up straight and said in a serious tone, Actually, there are a few reasons why I'm doing this. First of all, she was crying so badly, and her forehead was bleeding. There were so many people watching. It didn't feel right if I didn't take her. Feng Wu gave him a half-smile. I didn't know you were so kind, Feng Sun. Ahem, there's another reason, of course. She's determined to stick to us. If neither of us agreed, she would beg Boss Jun later. Can you imagine the consequences? Feng Wu asked, What consequences? Would Jun Linyuan say yes? Boss Jun is such an unyielding person. He would have sent her flying with a slap. She's a living human life, and she's so good-looking. It would be a pity if she dies like that. Feng Wu looked at him. So? Feng Sun said, She's just a maid. I let her sign a contract with me. If she doesn't behave, I'll just sell her off. Besides, she insists on following us. Well, I can't refuse her. Chapter 36-71 Chapter 36-71 New Maid 1 Chapter 36-71 New Maid 1 Feng Wu gave Feng Sun a strange look. Are you serious? Feng Sun nodded. Feng Wu said, Don't you think there's something wrong with Two Bros? Feng Sun was confused. What's wrong with her? Feng Wu didn't know what to say. Was it because men and women saw things differently? Why did Miss Lotus see through Two Bros' plan right away? Why couldn't Feng Sun see it? She's quite pretty. Feng Sun grinned. She looks docile, has been trained, and knows how to serve people. If you ever need a maid, feel free to have her serve you. Feng Wu said, Thank you, but that won't be necessary. Only then did Feng Sun realize how serious the situation was. What's wrong? He looked at Feng Wu in bewilderment. Her life was so miserable. Her father died and her mother remarried. Her stepfather then sold her to a brothel, and she had a hard time living there. She was getting beaten up every day. Feng Wu felt a headache coming on. She gave Feng Sun a resigned look. You can leave now. Feng Sun said, What? Xiao Wu, why are you like this? We're only taking in a maid who serves us tea. Why are you so mad? We have hundreds of maids like that in the family. One more won't make much of a difference. Feng Wu said, I'm not going to explain it to you. Just leave. After that, Feng Wu pushed Feng Sun out of the room and closed the door behind her. Feng Sun scratched his head. What on earth was going on? One more maid like this wouldn't make any difference. Xiao Wu wasn't feeling well, and Boss June couldn't help her when it came to washing her. What was wrong with having two bros help her? Feng Sun scratched his head. Women were so unpredictable. He couldn't understand it. After Feng Wu pushed Feng Sun out, she sat down in a chair, crossed her legs, and lowered her head. Jun Linyuan looked at her and saw that she was sulking. He smiled a little. The crown prince was used to being aloof and arrogant, and he hardly ever smiled. That was why his smile was so bright. Hearing the noise, Feng Wu couldn't help but look up at Jun Linyuan. Why are you smiling? Feng Wu didn't like the sound of it. With a flick of Jun Linyuan's fingers, Feng Wu and her chair moved to within an inch of him. What are you angry about? Jun Linyuan looked at Feng Wu. Feng Wu snorted. Jun Linyuan was confused. Is that even worth getting angry over? Frustrated, Feng Wu stared at Jun Linyuan and was agitated. That's not worth getting angry over? That's so frustrating. I can't believe Feng Sun did such a thing. Jun Linyuan looked at her in resignation. What did Feng Sun do? Feng Wu said, he took her in. Jun Linyuan rubbed his forehead. She's just a maid. Feng Wu flared up again. What do you mean by that? The first step is to become a maid, but what about the second and third step? Miss Lotus would, seeing that Feng Wu sounded like Feng Sun's mother. Jun Linyuan chuckled again. So what if she has other ideas? Feng Wu glared at Jun Linyuan. You men. You're all the same. Holy crap. Jun Linyuan was thinking the same thing as Feng Sun, and they both thought that it wasn't a big deal. Feng Wu was furious. Chapter 3672, Chapter 3672. New Maid 2. Chapter 3672. New Maid 2. Jun Linyuan was amused by the blushing girl. She was so serious. Feng Wu puffed out her cheeks and glared at him. Stop laughing. Finding the girl adorable, Jun Linyuan rubbed her head. Frustrated, Feng Wu dodged. Jun Linyuan sighed. So what if she has further plans? Why are you so angry? Feng Wu stared at him. So what? Jun Linyuan, I didn't know you were this kind of person. Feng Wu pushed Jun Linyuan away and wanted to rise to her feet. She had misjudged the teenager. Jun Linyuan looked at Feng Wu in resignation. Feng Wu took a few steps away, then went back to Jun Linyuan and glared at him. So, you're going to the same thing, aren't you? Jun Linyuan said, What? Feng Wu flared up and glared at him. The smart crown prince finally came back to himself and shook his head with a smile. Of course not. Only then did Feng Wu feel better, but she was still angry. Why not? Seeing her like this, Jun Linyuan felt so sorry for her that he wanted to hold her in his arms and dote on her. Fighting back his impulse, Jun Linyuan looked at Feng Wu and said seriously, The Empress Dowager has given me a lot of maids over the years. Have you seen one that has succeeded? On second thought, Feng Wu realized that he was right. Jun Linyuan was unapproachable, and anyone who dared to go near him would be turned to ash. Then why do you think Feng Sun is all right? Feng Wu asked. Jun Linyuan said, That's his business. Feng Wu didn't agree with him. Jun Linyuan looked at the girl affectionately and in resignation. One will learn from their mistakes. It may not be a bad thing if he suffers a little this time. Seeing that Feng Wu still didn't agree, Jun Linyuan patted her on the head. Better late than never. Don't you think so? Feng Wu said, That's true, but that was Feng Sun they were talking about here. Feng Wu wouldn't like the idea of him falling head over heels for two bros. Have some confidence in him. He's not stupid. It's just that he's a spiritual overlord now and thinks that he's invincible. Jun Linyuan didn't feel guilty at all about talking about his childhood friend behind his back. Feng Wu asked, Really? Jun Linyuan said, Just wait and see. With you around, he won't suffer too much. Feng Wu nodded and clenched her fist. I'll make some medicine for Feng Sun later. Jun Linyuan was perplexed. Feng Wu said, after he eats it, he can make a woman pregnant. Jun Linyuan rubbed his forehead. The girl was overthinking it. Feng Wu said, it's not that I'm overthinking it, but someone like Tubros, who grew up in a brothel, may never have such a great opportunity. I'm sure she'll try her best. After all, Feng Sun is a naive and overconfident teenager. I'm worried that he won't be able to handle her. What if Tubros gets pregnant? We can't sell her off, so we'll have to prevent it beforehand. Feng Wu started working on the medicine as she spoke. Jun Linyuan was amazed. However, he frowned when he saw the potion Feng Wu made. He stared at Feng Wu and asked, you know a lot, don't you? Compared to the girls Jun Linyuan had met before, Feng Wu was so different. Not only did she like to watch strippers, but she also competed with that Zhao Yi for a dancer. Moreover, she was very good at making the medicine, which confused Jun Linyuan. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.